In this video, I'll be explaining the entire timeline of The Last of Us in chronological order, covering every major event from the initial outbreak all the way through to the final moments of Part 2. This timeline focuses on the primary narrative events and does not include every minor character backstory or side story unless directly relevant to the main plot progression, meaning we'll be concentrating on the core journey of Joel, Ellie, and the key figures who shape their world rather than getting lost in tangential material that doesn't drive the overarching narrative forward. As always, throughout the video, there will be a timeline animation at the bottom of the screen, so you can easily follow along and understand exactly when each event takes place, which is especially important for a story that spans nearly 3 decades and jumps between different time periods as frequently as this one does. Now, here's something you might not know. The cordyceps brain infection, the catalyst for the entire apocalypse, was first identified and began its global spread years before the events of the main game, with early outbreaks occurring in South America, which means the world was already on the brink of collapse well before Outbreak Day hit the United States and changed everything forever. But before we get to any of that, we need to explain the setting first, because understanding the world before the fall is absolutely crucial to grasping just how catastrophic the events of September 2013 truly were, and why humanity never managed to recover. September 26, 2013 marks the day the world as humanity knew it came to an abrupt and violent end. This date, forever remembered as Outbreak Day, represents the moment when the cordyceps brain infection, a fungal pathogen that had mutated to infect human hosts, reached pandemic levels across the globe. What had perhaps been simmering beneath the surface of public awareness suddenly erupted into a crisis that would overwhelm governments, militaries, and healthcare systems in a matter of hours. The speed and ferocity of this outbreak caught even the most. In this video, I'll be explaining the entire timeline of The Last of Us in chronological order, covering every major event from the initial outbreak all the way through to the final moments of Part 2. This timeline focuses on the primary narrative events and does not include every minor character backstory or side story unless directly relevant to the main plot progression, meaning we'll be concentrating on the core journey of Joel, Ellie, and the key figures who shape their world rather than getting lost in tangential material that doesn't drive the overarching narrative forward. As always, throughout the video, there will be a timeline animation at the bottom of the screen, so you can easily follow along and understand exactly when each event takes place, which is especially important for a story that spans nearly 3 decades and jumps between different time periods as frequently as this one does. Now, here's something you might not know. The cordyceps brain infection, the catalyst for the entire apocalypse, was first identified and began its global spread years before the events of the main game, with early outbreaks occurring in South America, which means the world was already on the brink of collapse well before Outbreak Day hit the United States and changed everything forever. But before we get to any of that, we need to explain the setting first, because understanding the world before the fall is absolutely crucial to grasping just how catastrophic the events of September 2013 truly were, and why humanity never managed to recover. September 26, 2013 marks the day the world as humanity knew it came to an abrupt and violent end. This date, forever remembered as Outbreak Day, represents the moment when the cordyceps brain infection, a fungal pathogen that had mutated to infect human hosts, reached pandemic levels across the globe. What had perhaps been simmering beneath the surface of public awareness suddenly erupted into a crisis that would overwhelm governments, militaries, and healthcare systems in a matter of hours. The speed and ferocity of this outbreak caught even the most prepared nations off guard, and within a single day, the foundations of modern civilization began to crumble. The origins of this catastrophic pandemic trace back to contaminated crops in South American countries, specifically regions where industrial agriculture had created the perfect conditions for fungal mutation. The cordyceps fungus, which in nature typically infects insects and controls their behavior to spread its spores, had somehow made the evolutionary leap to mammals and ultimately to humans. Scientists would later theorize that climate change and rising global temperatures had pushed the fungus to adapt to warmer host environments, but on Outbreak Day itself, there was no time for such analysis. The infection spread through food supply chains with terrifying efficiency. Flour, grain products, and processed foods became vectors for transmission, moving through international trade networks and reaching dinner tables across multiple continents simultaneously. By the time health authorities recognized the pattern, millions had already been exposed. News reports throughout September 26th painted an increasingly dire picture of societal collapse. Morning broadcasts in various time zones began with what seemed like isolated incidents of violence and erratic behavior in major cities. Reporters described scenes of confusion as individuals attacked others in public spaces, displaying unusual aggression and what witnesses described as animalistic behavior. As the hours progressed, these reports multiplied exponentially. Healthcare systems, already strained by the initial wave of infected individuals seeking treatment, quickly became overwhelmed. Hospitals filled beyond capacity as patients arrived exhibiting symptoms that doctors had never encountered: rapid onset aggression, loss of higher cognitive function, and disturbing physical changes including fungal growth emerging from the head and face. Emergency rooms became scenes of chaos as infected individuals attacked medical staff and other patients. Radio broadcasts took on an increasingly frantic tone as the day wore on, with emergency services unable to respond to the sheer volume of calls for help flooding their systems. In Austin, Texas, Joel Miller was living what appeared to be an ordinary life, though one marked by the quiet struggles of a single father working in construction to support his daughter. Joel, a man in his mid-30s with a weathered face that spoke to long hours of physical labor, had built a modest existence for himself and his 12-year-old daughter, Sarah, after his divorce. His younger brother, Tommy, who worked alongside him in the construction business, remained one of his closest confidants and a frequent presence in their lives. On this particular Thursday, the Miller household had no indication that their world was about to be torn apart. Joel had picked up an extra shift, a common occurrence as he tried to ensure Sarah had everything she needed. The normalcy of their routine, the mundane concerns about work schedules and school assignments stood in stark contrast to the nightmare unfolding across the globe. Sarah Miller woke that evening to an empty house, the clock showing it was well past the time her father should have returned home. The television was on, left playing from earlier in the day, and the house had that particular stillness that comes when you realize you are alone. She called out for her father, but received no answer. As she moved through the house, she noticed her father's watch, the one she had intended to have repaired as a birthday gift for him, sitting on the counter where she had left it. The phone rang, breaking the silence, and Sarah answered to hear her Uncle Tommy's voice, tense and urgent in a way she had never heard before. Tommy was calling for Joel, asking if he was home, if he had seen the news, his words tumbling out rapidly. There was background noise on his end of the call, sounds of commotion and shouting that seemed out of place. Sarah told him Joel was not home, that she did not know where he was, and Tommy's response carried a weight of concern that frightened her. After hanging up with Tommy, Sarah turned her attention to the television, where the regular programming had been replaced by emergency news coverage. The images on screen were difficult to process. Reporters stood in front of scenes of urban chaos, their professional composure cracking as they described riots, attacks, and a rapidly spreading infection that authorities could not contain. Footage showed people running through streets, cars abandoned haphazardly, and disturbing glimpses of individuals moving with jerky, unnatural movements as they pursued others. The news anchors used terms like epidemic and state of emergency, while struggling to provide concrete information about what was actually happening. Health officials appeared on screen urging people to stay indoors, avoid contact with anyone displaying symptoms of infection, and wait for further instructions. The symptoms they described included sudden aggression, loss of speech, and violent behavior toward others. Sarah watched with growing unease, the disconnect between the safety of her living room and the chaos on screen creating a surreal sense of detachment. Joel arrived home to find Sarah awake and watching the news coverage. His appearance immediately told her something was deeply wrong. His face was drawn, his clothes dirty from work, and there was a look in his eyes that Sarah had never seen before, a mixture of fear and grim determination. He moved quickly through the house, telling Sarah they needed to leave right now, that they could not stay here. When Sarah asked what was happening, Joel's response was clipped and urgent. He told her to put on her shoes, to stay close to him, and that Tommy was coming to get them. There was no time for explanations, no reassurances that everything would be okay. Joel's tone alone conveyed the severity of the situation. He checked the locks on the doors, glanced out the windows at the quiet suburban street, and kept his phone in his hand, waiting for Tommy's call. Tommy arrived in his truck, pulling into the driveway with an urgency that sent gravel scattering. Joel carried Sarah out to the vehicle, moving with purpose as lights began coming on in neighboring houses. The night air carried sounds that did not belong in their quiet neighborhood, distant sirens, car alarms, and something else that might have been screaming. Tommy was behind the wheel, his jaw set and his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. As they pulled out of the driveway, Joel in the passenger seat and Sarah in the back, the radio crackled with emergency broadcasts. The announcements urged citizens to remain calm, to stay in their homes, and to avoid the downtown area where the National Guard was being deployed. The contradiction between being told to stay home and their own flight was not lost on any of them. The drive through Austin quickly revealed the scope of the disaster. What should have been relatively quiet streets on a Thursday night had transformed into corridors of panic. Cars clogged the roads as residents attempted to flee, creating gridlock at major intersections. Tommy navigated through side streets trying to find a route that would get them out of the city, but everywhere they turned brought new evidence of societal breakdown. They passed a convenience store with its windows smashed, people running out with armfuls of supplies. A house fire burned unchecked, no emergency services responding. And then they saw their first infected individual up close. A man stumbled into the street ahead of them, his movements wrong, his head twitching in sharp, unnatural jerks. Even from inside the truck, they could see the fungal growth on his face, white and spreading. Tommy swerved around him, accelerating hard. The streets grew more chaotic as they approached what Tommy hoped would be a clear route out of the city. Cars had crashed into each other and into buildings, their drivers having abandoned them, or worse. People ran past without direction, some carrying belongings, others simply fleeing in terror. And among the panicked crowds moved the infected, pursuing the uninfected with single-minded determination. Joel told Sarah to get down, to not look, but the sounds alone told the story of attacks happening in the darkness around them. Tommy's truck pushed through the chaos, nudging aside debris, mounting curbs when necessary, doing whatever it took to keep moving forward. Then came the collision that changed everything. Another vehicle, its driver either panicked or infected, slammed into the side of Tommy's truck at an intersection. Their escape through Austin becomes a harrowing gauntlet of terror and violence. As Joel navigates the truck through increasingly congested streets, the family encounters wave after wave of infected, their bodies contorted and twitching with the fungal growth that has already begun to reshape their physiology. The cordyceps infection works with terrifying speed, transforming ordinary people into mindless predators in a matter of hours. These newly turned infected still wear the clothes they had on when the outbreak began, business suits and casual wear now stained with blood and the telltale spores that mark their transformation. Streets are littered with abandoned vehicles, their doors hanging open where occupants fled in panic or were dragged out by the infected. Fires rage unchecked in several buildings, the result of car accidents, explosions, or deliberate attempts by desperate survivors to create barriers against the infected hordes. The chaos extends beyond just the infected. Desperate survivors driven by fear and the primal instinct for self-preservation have become dangers in their own right. Some have armed themselves, shooting at anyone who approaches. Others have barricaded themselves in homes and businesses, unwilling to help those still trapped outside. The social contract that held civilization together has dissolved in a matter of hours. People who were neighbors that morning are now willing to kill each other for a chance at survival. Joel witnesses acts of both heroism and cruelty as they push through the pandemonium. A mother shields her children with her own body. A man shoves an elderly woman to the ground to reach a car first. The veneer of civilization has been stripped away, revealing the raw desperation underneath. Tommy does his best to clear a path, but the truck can only go so far through the gridlocked streets. At one intersection, completely blocked by a multi-car pileup, they are forced to abandon the vehicle and continue on foot. Joel carries Sarah, who is still in considerable pain from her broken ankle, while Tommy takes point with his rifle at the ready. The sounds of screaming, gunfire, and the inhuman shrieks of the infected create a nightmarish symphony that echoes through the city. The smell of smoke, gasoline, and something else, something organic and wrong, permeates the air. This is the smell of the cordyceps spores themselves, a musty fungal odor that will become all too familiar to survivors in the years to come. As they move through a residential area, trying to find a route that will take them away from the densest concentrations of infected, they encounter more survivors attempting to flee. Some call out for help, begging to join them. Tommy, hardened by his military experience, knows they cannot afford to slow down or take on additional people who might be injured or infected. Joel, focused entirely on protecting Sarah, barely registers these pleas. His world has narrowed to a single purpose: getting his daughter to safety. The moral compromises that will define the post-outbreak world are already beginning to take shape. The situation deteriorates further when a panicked civilian, his eyes wild with terror and perhaps the early stages of infection, suddenly lunges at Joel from behind a parked car. The man is unarmed but desperate, perhaps trying to take Sarah as a hostage or simply lashing out in his fear-induced madness. Joel stumbles under the attack, nearly dropping Sarah. The man claws at Joel's jacket, screaming incoherently about needing help, about his family, about getting out. Before Joel can react or defend himself, a gunshot rings out. Tommy has fired, the bullet striking the civilian in the chest. The man falls backward, a look of surprise frozen on his face as he collapses onto the pavement. It is the first time Tommy has killed someone who is not infected. Not yet, anyway. The distinction between infected and uninfected, between monster and human, is already blurring. Joel meets his brother's eyes for a brief moment. No words are exchanged, but both men understand that this is what survival looks like now. There is no time to check if the man could have been reasoned with, no time for guilt or second-guessing. They keep moving. The gunshot, however, has consequences. The sound attracts attention from both infected and military personnel attempting to establish control. Within moments, more gunfire erupts from multiple directions. The military has begun implementing emergency protocols, establishing checkpoints and attempting to create secure corridors for evacuation. But the situation is evolving too rapidly. Soldiers, many of them young and inadequately trained for this scenario, are making split-second decisions about who lives and who dies. In the confusion, with smoke obscuring visibility and the infected mixing with fleeing civilians, the military is firing on anything that moves in restricted zones. Tommy, Joel, and Sarah find themselves caught in a crossfire. Tracer rounds streak through the darkness. The distinctive crack of military-grade rifles mixes with the screams and chaos. Tommy shouts for Joel to follow him down an alley, but as they run, a group of infected bursts from a side street, cutting between the brothers. Tommy is forced to engage them, firing rapidly to keep them at bay. He yells for Joel to keep going, that he will catch up. Joel, with Sarah in his arms, has no choice but to run in a different direction. He glances back once, seeing Tommy disappearing into the smoke and darkness, still firing. The brothers are separated, and in this moment, neither knows if they will ever see each other again. Joel runs through unfamiliar streets, his arms burning with the effort of carrying Sarah. She clings to him, her face buried against his shoulder, trying not to cry out despite the pain from her ankle. Every jolt sends fresh waves of agony through her leg. Joel's heart pounds not just from exertion, but from fear. He has lost his brother, the city is falling apart around them, and he has no clear plan beyond getting away from the immediate danger. He cuts through backyards, jumps fences, and navigates through the skeletal frames of houses under construction, always moving, always searching for somewhere, anywhere, that might be safe. Eventually, Joel finds himself on a hillside on the outskirts of the city, a partially wooded area that offers some concealment. He thinks perhaps they can hide here until the military establishes better control, until someone comes to help. He is still clinging to the belief that this situation is temporary, that the government will contain the outbreak, that normalcy will return. Sarah is exhausted, her face pale from pain and shock. Joel sets her down gently against a tree, trying to catch his breath and get his bearings. The lights of Austin spread out below them, but instead of the usual orderly glow, the city is a patchwork of darkness and fire. Entire neighborhoods have lost power. The skyline is punctuated by flames and the searchlights of military helicopters. Before Joel can formulate a plan, a powerful spotlight suddenly illuminates them. A soldier appears, weapon raised, his voice sharp with authority and fear. He demands they stay where they are, his rifle trained directly on them. Joel immediately raises his hands, trying to appear non-threatening. He calls out that they are not infected, that his daughter is hurt, that they just need help. Sarah, terrified, presses herself against the tree. The soldier, young and clearly overwhelmed by the night's events, speaks urgently into his radio, requesting instructions. Joel can hear the crackling response, though he cannot make out the exact words. What he does see is the soldier's expression change, hardening into grim resolve. The soldier receives his orders. In the chaos of Outbreak Day, with the infection spreading at an uncontrollable rate and the military unable to distinguish infected from healthy civilians, the decision has been made at command levels to establish hard perimeters. No one is to pass certain checkpoints. No exceptions. The rules of engagement have been altered in ways that would have been unthinkable just hours earlier. Soldiers are ordered to shoot anyone attempting to breach containment zones, regardless of whether they show signs of infection. The logic is brutal but simple. Better to sacrifice some uninfected civilians than risk the infection spreading beyond the quarantine boundaries. It is a calculus of horror, and this young soldier has been given an impossible order. Joel sees the soldier's finger move to the trigger. He pleads desperately, his voice breaking. He explains that Sarah is just a little girl, that she is hurt, that they are not sick. He begs for mercy, for humanity, for any shred of the civilization that existed just this morning. But the soldier has his orders. The rifle barks, muzzle flash bright in the darkness. Joel feels the impact, a round striking him in the side, the force spinning him partially around. He falls, tumbling down the hillside with Sarah. They roll several feet before coming to rest in a small depression. Joel, despite the searing pain in his side, immediately reaches for Sarah. It is only then that he realizes she has been hit too. Sarah lies in his arms, blood spreading across her shirt. The bullet has struck her in the abdomen, a catastrophic wound. Her eyes are wide with shock and confusion. She does not understand what has happened, why this soldier has shot them, why her father cannot fix this like he fixes everything else. Joel applies pressure to the wound with trembling hands, but he can feel her life draining away. There is too much blood, and they are alone on this hillside with no medical help available. Sarah's breathing becomes rapid and shallow. She looks up at her father, trying to speak, trying to tell him something, but the words will not come. Joel holds her close, whispering that everything will be okay, even though he knows it will not be. He tells her he loves her, that she is going to be fine, lies that any parent would tell in this moment. Sarah's hand grips his shirt weakly, then goes slack. Her eyes, which had been so full of life and promise just hours ago, go distant and empty. She dies in her father's arms on September 26, 2013, a victim not of the infection, but of the brutal measures taken to contain it. Tommy arrives moments later, having fought his way through the chaos to find his brother. He sees Joel cradling Sarah's body, rocking back and forth, and he knows immediately what has happened. The soldier who fired the shots has fled, either consumed by guilt or simply moving on to his next assignment. Tommy approaches slowly, placing a hand on Joel's shoulder. There are no words adequate for this moment. Joel's world has ended as surely as the world at large. The daughter he raised, protected, and loved is gone. Something fundamental breaks inside Joel Miller on this hillside. The man who existed before this moment, the contractor who built things and told jokes and worried about birthday cakes, dies with his daughter. What remains is something harder, colder, shaped by grief and rage. As dawn breaks on September 27th, the full scope of the catastrophe becomes apparent. The cordyceps brain infection has spread to every major population center in the United States and beyond. Millions are dead or infected. Governments have collapsed or are in the process of collapsing. The military, overwhelmed and operating under increasingly draconian orders, begins establishing quarantine zones in major cities. These QZAs, as they come to be known, are fortified areas where uninfected civilians are gathered under martial law. Entry is strictly controlled, with anyone showing signs of infection immediately executed. The zones are meant to be temporary shelters until the outbreak can be contained, but as weeks turn to months, it becomes clear that they will be permanent fixtures of the new world. Life in the QZs is harsh, with strict rationing, forced labor, and summary justice for any infractions. But for those inside, it is still better than facing the infected hordes outside the walls. The establishment of these zones requires further violence and loss of life. Entire neighborhoods are cleared by military force. People are separated from loved ones. Those who resist are shot. The infected are burned in massive pyres that send columns of smoke into the sky for days. The world as humanity knew it has ended, replaced by a brutal new reality where survival trumps all other considerations. By 2033, 20 years after the cordyceps outbreak first tore civilization apart, the world has settled into a grim new reality. The infected still roam the ruins of once great cities. FEDRA, the Federal Disaster Response Agency, maintains authoritarian control over the few remaining quarantine zones, and resistance groups like the Fireflies wage an increasingly desperate insurgency against military rule. In this broken world, survival often means compromising whatever principles you might have once held dear, and nowhere is that truth more evident than in the Boston quarantine zone, where Joel Miller has carved out a dangerous existence as a smuggler. Joel's life in Boston is defined by routine violence and moral compromise. He works alongside his partner, Tess, a sharp and pragmatic woman who shares his willingness to do whatever it takes to survive. Together, they've built a reputation in the QZ's black market, smuggling contraband past Fedra checkpoints, trading in ration cards, and occasionally dealing in weapons. It's a far cry from the man Joel was before the outbreak, before he lost his daughter Sarah on that first terrible night. The intervening 2 decades have hardened him into someone who trusts almost no one, who sees attachments as liabilities, and who has learned to bury his grief beneath layers of cynicism and controlled brutality. His brother Tommy, who once survived alongside him in the years following the outbreak, has long since left to join the Fireflies, a decision that created a rift between them. Joel considers the Fireflies naive idealists, people who cling to impossible dreams of restoring the old world rather than accepting the harsh reality of the new one. The events that will change Joel's life forever begin with a deal gone wrong. He and Tess have been working with a local smuggler named Robert, a transaction involving a cache of weapons that Joel and Tess desperately need to recover. But Robert, sensing an opportunity for greater profit, double-crosses them. He sells their weapons to someone else, likely the Fireflies themselves, and goes into hiding within the sprawling, decrepit neighborhoods of the Boston QZ. The quarantine zone itself is a study in controlled decay. Fedra maintains order through military checkpoints, public executions for infected individuals or dissidents, forced labor assignments, and a ration card system that keeps the population barely fed and entirely dependent. The buildings are crumbling, graffiti covers the walls with both Firefly slogans and desperate pleas, and the constant hum of generators and searchlights reminds everyone that they live in what amounts to a prison. Beyond the walls, the infected wait in the ruins, and Fedra's standing orders are clear. Anyone who tries to leave without authorization will be shot on sight. Joel and Tess track Robert down with methodical efficiency. They've done this sort of thing before, and they know how to navigate the QZ's underworld. When they finally corner him, Robert tries to justify his betrayal by claiming he got a better offer, that it was just business. Tess doesn't want to hear it. She's been in this world long enough to know that letting betrayal slide is an invitation for more of the same. She kills Robert, a cold and pragmatic execution that underscores the brutal calculus that governs life in the quarantine zone. With Robert dead, however, Joel and Tess are left with a problem. Their weapons are gone, sold to parties unknown, and without those weapons, they're vulnerable in a world where vulnerability gets you killed. The answer to their problem arrives in an unexpected form. Marlene, the leader of the Fireflies, finds them shortly after Robert's death. Marlene is a woman driven by conviction, someone who genuinely believes that the Fireflies can find a cure for the cordyceps infection and restore some semblance of the world that was lost. She's also practical enough to know that idealism alone won't achieve her goals. She needs people like Joel and Tess, people who can get things done in the shadows, who know how to move through dangerous territory without drawing attention. Marlene has a job for them, and she's willing to pay with the very weapons Robert stole. The job seems simple enough on the surface. Smuggle a teenage girl out of the Boston QZ and deliver her to a Firefly safe house outside the city. The girl's name is Ellie, and according to Marlene, she's the most important person in the world. Marlene explains the situation with an urgency that cuts through her usual revolutionary rhetoric. Ellie is immune to the cordyceps infection. She's been bitten, infected with the fungus that turns people into mindless, violent creatures, and yet she hasn't turned. She's still herself, still human, still sane. In the 20 years since the outbreak, there have been rumors of immunity, whispers of people who seemed resistant to infection, but nothing concrete, nothing verified. If Ellie truly is immune, if her body has somehow found a way to fight off the cordyceps fungus, then studying her could lead to a vaccine, a cure, a way to finally end the pandemic that destroyed civilization. The Fireflies have doctors, scientists who survived the outbreak, people who might be able to unlock the secret of Ellie's immunity and synthesize it into something that could save humanity. But first, they need to get Ellie to their main research facility, and that means getting her out of Boston, through miles of infected territory, past Fedra patrols and hostile survivors, to a destination Marlene will reveal once they're safely away. Joel is skeptical. He's heard too many promises, seen too many hopes crushed, to believe in miracle cures. But he needs those weapons, and Tess convinces him that the job is worth the risk. They agree to Marlene's terms. They'll take Ellie, deliver her to the Fireflies, and in exchange, they'll get their weapons back plus additional supplies. It's a transaction, nothing more, just another smuggling job in a long line of morally ambiguous work. They don't need to believe in the Fireflies' cause. They just need to complete the delivery. Meeting Ellie complicates things immediately. She's 14 years old, sharp-tongued and defiant, with a mouth that gets her into trouble and a resilience that suggests she's already survived more than most kids her age. She's been raised in a Fedra military boarding school, trained in the basics of survival, taught to fear the infected and obey authority, but she's also been exposed to Firefly ideology through Marlene, who knew Ellie's mother and has watched over her from a distance. Ellie is both naive and worldly, innocent in some ways but hardened in others. She knows what the infected are. She's seen public executions. She understands that the world is dangerous, but she hasn't yet experienced the full horror of what lies beyond the quarantine zone walls. She's also desperate to matter, to be part of something bigger than herself. And the revelation that she might be the key to a cure has given her a sense of purpose she's never had before. The journey begins with the immediate challenge of getting out of the Boston QZ without being caught by Fedra. Joel and Tess know the patrol routes, the gaps in security, the places where the fences can be breached. They move through the shadows, keeping to alleys and abandoned buildings, avoiding the main thoroughfares where Fedra soldiers conduct random searches and check ration cards. Ellie proves to be more capable than Joel expected. She follows instructions, stays quiet when necessary, and doesn't panic when they have close calls with patrols. But there's tension between them from the start. Joel sees her as cargo, a package to be delivered, and he makes it clear that she needs to do exactly what he says without question. Ellie bristles at being treated like a helpless child. She wants to prove herself, to show that she can handle whatever comes, and she resents Joel's cold, dismissive attitude. As they navigate the QZ, Ellie reveals the bite mark on her arm. It's 3 weeks old, far beyond the timeline for infection. Anyone bitten by an infected person turns within 2 days, usually much faster. The transformation is inevitable, a horrifying process as the cordyceps fungus invades the brain and takes control. But Ellie's bite has healed. The wound is scarred over, and she shows no symptoms of infection. She's living proof that immunity is possible. Joel's initial reaction is disbelief bordering on hostility. He's seen too many people claim immunity, seen too many desperate lies to accept this at face value. He suspects it's a trick, maybe a fake bite mark, maybe some kind of Firefly propaganda stunt. Tess examines the bite more carefully and concludes it's real. The implications are staggering, but there's no time to process them. They need to keep moving to get out of the QZ before Fedra discovers what they're doing. They make their way to the edge of the quarantine zone, slipping through a breach in the wall that Joel and Tess have used before. Beyond the wall lies Boston's ruins, a landscape of collapsed buildings, flooded streets, and infected lurking in the shadows. The city outside the QZ is a dead zone, abandoned by Fedra years ago when they consolidated control around the defensible core. Nature has begun to reclaim the ruins. Vegetation grows through cracked pavement, buildings are covered in creeping vines, and the silence is broken only by the distant sounds of infected clicking and screeching. This is Ellie's first real exposure to the world outside, and despite her bravado, the reality is overwhelming. The scale of the destruction, the omnipresent threat of infected, the knowledge that one wrong move could mean death, all of it combines to drive home just how dangerous this journey will be. Their destination is the Capitol building, where Marlene has arranged for a group of Fireflies to meet them and take Ellie the rest of the way. Joel and Tess navigate through the ruins, avoiding infected and using the skills they've honed over 2 decades of survival. They encounter runners, infected people in the early stages of the fungal takeover who still retain some human characteristics, but are driven by mindless aggression. They sneak past clickers, infected whose faces have been completely consumed by fungal growth, leaving them blind but equipped with a form of echolocation that makes them incredibly dangerous in close quarters. Ellie watches as Joel and Tess dispatch infected with brutal efficiency, using makeshift weapons and stealth kills. It's a harsh education in the reality of survival, and Ellie begins to understand that Joel's coldness isn't just personality, it's armor, a necessary distance that allows him to do what needs to be done. When they finally reach the Capitol building, they find a scene of carnage. The Fireflies who are supposed to meet them are all dead, killed in what appears to have been a firefight with Fedra soldiers. Bodies lie scattered across the floor, weapons spent, supplies looted. It's a devastating blow. Without the Fireflies, they have no clear path forward, no way to complete the delivery. Joel's immediate instinct is to abort the mission, to return to the QZ and cut their losses. But Tess has other plans. She's been examining the scene and she's noticed something that Joel hasn't. She's been bitten. During their journey through the ruins, in a scuffle with infected that seemed minor at the time, she was bitten on the arm. She's hidden it from Joel, knowing what his reaction would be, but now there's no point in concealing it any longer. She shows him the bite, and the look on Joel's face says everything. They both know what it means. Tess has hours at best before she turns. Joel makes a difficult decision. He knows he's not the man for this job, that his age and his demons make him a poor choice to escort Ellie all the way to the Fireflies. He decides to take her to his younger brother Tommy, who he believes might know where other Firefly cells are operating. Tommy has always been more idealistic, more connected to the resistance networks that still fight for something resembling civilization. It's a long shot, but Joel tells himself it's the right call. In truth, he's looking for a way out, a way to pass this burden to someone else before he gets too attached, before the cracks in his armor grow any wider. Their journey begins through the outskirts of Boston, a landscape of collapsed highways and flooded subway tunnels. The quarantine zone's walls soon disappear behind them, replaced by the wild reclamation of nature. Trees push through asphalt, vines strangle rusted cars, and everywhere, the infected. They encounter runners in an abandoned warehouse, their shrieks echoing off corrugated metal walls. Joel moves with practiced efficiency, conserving ammunition, using makeshift weapons when he can. Ellie watches, learning. She's never been outside the walls before, never seen the infected up close in their natural hunting grounds. Runners are terrifying enough, but when they stumble into a building where clickers nest, Ellie experiences true primal fear. The clicking sound, that biological echolocation that gives the creatures their name, fills the darkness. Joel teaches her to move slowly, to breathe quietly, to understand that these blind hunters navigate entirely by sound. One wrong step, one sharp intake of breath, and they'll swarm. As they put more distance between themselves and Boston, Joel recognizes that Ellie needs to know how to defend herself. He can't protect her every second, and she's proven she has steady nerves. In a clearing surrounded by birch trees, he teaches her how to handle a rifle properly, how to brace the stock against her shoulder to absorb the recoil, how to line up the sights and squeeze the trigger, not pull it, how to lead a moving target. Ellie takes to it quickly, her determination overcoming her lack of experience. She's been preparing for this her whole life in the QZ, training in Phaedra's school, fighting other kids, learning to survive in a world that never wanted her. Now, she's finally outside, finally doing something that matters. Joel watches her practice and sees flickers of Sarah, the same concentration, the same fierce independence. He pushes the thought away. Their path takes them through small towns reclaimed by wilderness, places where nature has erased almost all evidence of human habitation. Then they reach a town that is very much not abandoned, Bill's Town. The place is a maze of booby traps, tripwires, and improvised explosives. They trigger one by accident, a car alarm that brings infected running from every direction. In the chaos, they're separated, and Ellie falls into a basement where she's pinned by an infected. She manages to kill it with her knife, but not before it bites her arm. She stares at the wound, knowing what it means, but when Joel finds her moments later, she hides it under her sleeve. She's not ready to reveal her immunity yet, not ready to trust him completely. Bill appears like a vengeful ghost, shotgun raised, screaming obscenities. He's a survivalist who has turned this entire town into his personal fortress, living alone among his traps and supplies. He's paranoid, hostile, and deeply antisocial, but he's also an old acquaintance of Joel's, someone who owes him a favor from years past. Bill recognizes Joel immediately, and his hostility shifts to grudging acknowledgement. He doesn't want them here, makes that abundantly clear, but he'll help them because debts matter in this world. Bill is a portrait of isolation's cost. He's survived 20 years by trusting no one, by keeping the entire world at arm's length, and it's made him something less than human. Bill leads them through his town, pointing out traps with casual pride. He's rigged entire streets with explosives, set up electric fences powered by generators, created kill zones that funnel infected into predetermined death traps. It's impressive in its paranoid thoroughness. They need a car, something that runs, and Bill has several in his garage. He's a mechanic among his many other skills, and he's kept vehicles operational through scavenging parts and improvising solutions. While Bill works on getting a truck running, Ellie explores, her curiosity overcoming caution. She finds evidence of another person having lived here. Men's clothing in 2 different sizes, 2 plates at the table, photographs. Joel helps Bill with the truck, their conversation terse and practical. Bill makes his contempt for Joel's mission clear. Taking a kid across the country to find the Fireflies is suicide, he says. The Fireflies are terrorists playing at revolution, and they'll get Joel killed for nothing. Joel doesn't argue. He's heard it all before, thought most of it himself. But he took the job, and he'll see it through, at least as far as Tommy. Bill mentions Frank in passing, just once, and the name hangs in the air with unexpected weight. Joel doesn't press. Everyone has ghosts. They get the truck running, a small victory in a world where working vehicles are worth their weight in ammunition. As they prepare to leave, Ellie finds a note, folded and placed deliberately where someone would eventually discover it. Frank's suicide note. She reads it, her expression shifting from curiosity to sadness. The note reveals everything Bill tried to hide. Frank was his partner, the only person Bill let past his defenses in 20 years. They'd lived together in this fortified town, two men building something like a life amid the ruins. But Frank was sick, infected not by cordyceps, but by something slower, some pre-outbreak disease that Bill's supplies and paranoia couldn't fix. Rather than waste away, Frank chose his own end. The note is tender and brutal, thanking Bill for the years they had, apologizing for leaving, and making clear that their relationship had become strained by Bill's inability to see beyond survival, to actually live. Ellie shows the note to Joel, who reads it in silence. He looks at Bill differently now, seeing the survivalist's hostility as armor over grief. Bill snatches the note back, and for a moment his face cracks, revealing the pain underneath. Then the armor slams back into place. He tells them to get out, to take the truck and leave and never come back. Joel nods. He understands. Some losses don't heal, they just calcify into scar tissue. They drive away, leaving Bill alone in his fortress town, a man who survived everything except loneliness. The truck gives them range and speed, two luxuries they haven't had before. Joel and Ellie continue their journey west, aiming for Wyoming where Tommy has supposedly settled. The landscape changes as they drive, Boston's urban density giving way to smaller cities and rural stretches. They talk more in the truck, the shared space and forward momentum loosening their guarded conversations. Ellie asks questions about the world before, and Joel answers some, deflects others. She tells him about growing up in the Boston QZ, about her friend Riley, about the military school where Fedra trains children to become soldiers or workers. Joel begins to see her not as cargo, but as a person, a transition he's been resisting since they left. They avoid major highways, sticking to back roads where possible. The interstate system is a graveyard of vehicles, multi-mile traffic jams frozen in time from Outbreak Day when millions tried to flee and nowhere was safe. They navigate around these metal monuments to panic, sometimes driving through fields to bypass impassable roads. The truck's gas tank becomes a constant concern. They siphon fuel from abandoned vehicles, a time-consuming process that leaves them vulnerable. Joel teaches Ellie how to do it, how to use a hose and gravity, how to filter out sediment that settled over 20 years. Their route takes them through Pennsylvania, and they decide to pass through Pittsburgh to scavenge supplies. It's a decision Joel regrets immediately. Pittsburgh never became a Fedra quarantine zone. Instead, it fell to hunters, groups of survivors who prey on other survivors. The hunters started as citizens who overthrew the military in their early years, but without Fedra's structure, they devolved into something worse. They've turned the city into a killing ground, setting up ambushes on every major route, using fake distress signals and roadblocks to trap travelers. Joel and Ellie drive into the trap before they realize what's happening. A bus blocks the road, positioned too deliberately to be random. Joel sees it a second too late. He tries to reverse, but hunters emerge from buildings on both sides, weapons raised. They're organized, coordinated, wearing mismatched tactical gear scavenged from police and military sources. Their leader, a hard-faced woman with a rifle, orders Joel to stop. He doesn't. He floors the accelerator, trying to ram through a gap in the blockade. Gunfire erupts. Bullets punch through the truck's body, spiderweb the windshield. Ellie screams. Joel wrestles with the wheel, trying to keep them moving, but the hunters have done this before. They've prepared for runners. A spike strip shreds the truck's tires. The vehicle lurches, loses traction, and Joel loses control. They crash into a storefront, the impact violent enough to deploy the airbags, which probably haven't worked in 2 decades but somehow still do. The truck is totaled, steam hissing from the ruined engine. Joel drags Ellie from the wreckage as hunters close in. They run, ducking into a building, Joel firing behind them to buy seconds. The hunters don't follow immediately. They know the city, know all the exits, know they have time. This is their hunting ground, and they're patient predators. Joel and Ellie are forced to navigate Pittsburgh on foot, a nightmare scenario. The city is a vertical maze of collapsed buildings and makeshift bridges. The hunters have marked their territory with spray paint and corpses, warnings to anyone foolish enough to enter. Joel and Ellie move through abandoned offices and flooded basements, always listening for the hunters' whistles, the signals they use to coordinate their patrols. The hunters are numerous and well-armed, better equipped than most survivor groups. They've been doing this for years, stripping every traveler who passes through, building their arsenal one ambush at a time. In a hotel lobby overtaken by fungal growth, Joel and Ellie hide from a hunter patrol. They're pinned down, low on ammunition, exhausted from hours of running. Then they hear different voices, younger, more frightened. 2 people are being chased by the same hunters. Joel makes a split-second decision. He creates a distraction, drawing the hunters away from the 2 strangers. In the chaos that follows, the four of them end up together in a secure room, catching their breath while hunters search the floors above and below. The strangers are Henry and Sam, two brothers trying to escape Pittsburgh. Henry is in his late 20s, protective and calculating, making decisions with the cold logic of someone who's kept his younger brother alive through impossible odds. Sam is around 13, close to Ellie's age, but he's deaf, communicating through sign language that Henry interprets. They've been trapped in the city for weeks, unable to break through the hunter perimeter. Henry explains that he knows a way out, a route through the sewers that the hunters don't patrol because it's infested with infected. Joel is skeptical, both of the plan and of trusting strangers, but they're out of options. The hunters know they're here, and it's only a matter of time before they're found. An uneasy alliance forms. Four people who would normally trust no one, bound together by necessity and the hunters closing in from every direction. With their supplies restocked and a working vehicle secured from Bill's reluctant assistance, Joel and Ellie depart the fortified town in the summer of 2033, setting their course westward toward Wyoming. Their destination is a hydroelectric dam where Tommy, Joel's younger brother and former Firefly member, was last known to be operating with a community of survivors. The journey ahead spans thousands of miles across a country that has been reclaimed by nature and chaos in equal measure. The highways that once connected America's cities now serve as dangerous corridors through infected territory and the domains of hostile survivor groups. For Joel, this cross-country trek represents more than just a contract to deliver cargo, an opportunity to reconnect with the only family he has left, though he keeps this motivation carefully guarded from Ellie, maintaining the professional distance of a smuggler completing a job. The route west takes them through Pennsylvania, where the remnants of once thriving industrial cities now stand as hollow monuments to the world that was lost. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania's second largest city, lies directly in their path. Before the outbreak, Pittsburgh was experiencing a renaissance, its economy diversifying beyond its steel industry roots into healthcare, education, and technology. The city's strategic location at the confluence of three rivers made it a natural hub for transportation and commerce. When the cordyceps outbreak reached Pittsburgh in the early days of the pandemic, the military established it as a quarantine zone, herding survivors behind fortified barriers while attempting to contain the infection. For years, Pittsburgh functioned as one of Fedra's controlled zones, with the Federal Disaster Response Agency maintaining martial law over the civilian population. However, unlike Boston, which remained under military control for 2 decades, Pittsburgh fell to internal rebellion. Approximately 5 years before Joel and Ellie's arrival, the civilians rose up against Fedra's oppressive rule, overwhelming the soldiers through sheer numbers and desperation. What followed was not liberation, but a descent into something arguably worse than military occupation. In the power vacuum left by Fedra's collapse, organized groups of survivors turned to predatory tactics to secure resources and territory. These groups, known throughout the survivor community as hunters, abandoned any pretense of rebuilding civilization in favor of ambushing travelers, stealing supplies, and killing anyone who entered their territory. The hunter phenomenon emerged in multiple cities across the United States after the outbreak, but Pittsburgh's hunter population became particularly notorious for their organization and ruthlessness. Unlike the scattered bandits that plagued rural areas, Pittsburgh's hunters operated with military-style coordination, using lookouts, coordinated ambushes, and systematic patrols to control entire neighborhoods. They marked their territory with graffiti and corpses, sending clear messages to anyone who might consider passing through. The city's infrastructure, already damaged by years of neglect and infected incursions, became a labyrinth of death traps and killing zones designed to funnel unsuspecting travelers into ambush points. As Joel drives their truck into Pittsburgh's outskirts, the signs of hunter occupation become immediately apparent. Abandoned vehicles have been deliberately positioned to create roadblocks, forcing traffic into specific channels. Buildings bear spray-painted warnings and territorial markers. The streets, empty of both infected and normal survivors, carry an oppressive silence that Joel recognizes as the calm before violence. His instincts, honed by 20 years of survival in this brutal world, tell him to turn back. But the route through Pittsburgh represents the most direct path west, and fuel is too precious to waste on lengthy detours. He instructs Ellie to stay alert, his hand moving closer to the rifle at his side. The tension in the truck is palpable as they navigate deeper into the urban landscape, every intersection and overpass a potential threat. Ambush, when it comes, is textbook hunter tactics. A man stumbles into the road ahead, apparently injured and calling for help. Joel, having used this exact same trick himself during his darker years, immediately recognizes it as a trap. He accelerates, attempting to bypass the decoy, but the hunters are prepared for this response. A bus barricade forces him to swerve, and in the chaos of trying to avoid the obstacle, the truck crashes violently into a storefront. The impact is devastating, shattering glass and crumpling metal. Before Joel can fully recover from the collision, hunters emerge from concealed positions, weapons drawn, shouting commands. These aren't desperate scavengers or opportunistic thieves. They move with practiced coordination, covering angles and closing off escape routes with the efficiency of trained soldiers. Joel realizes with grim certainty that he and Ellie have driven directly into one of Pittsburgh's most dangerous hunter territories, and their chances of talking their way out are exactly zero. The fight that erupts is desperate and immediate. Joel, still disoriented from the crash, drags Ellie from the wrecked truck as bullets tear through the air around them. They take cover behind the vehicle's engine block, one of the few parts of a car that can reliably stop rifle rounds. The hunters advance with confidence, clearly expecting easy prey. They shout to each other, coordinating their approach, discussing how they'll divide the supplies and what they'll do with the captives. Their casual cruelty, the way they discuss murder and worse as routine business, reveals just how far humanity has fallen in these lawless territories. Joel returns fire with calculated precision, each shot carefully aimed despite the chaos. He's not trying to kill every hunter, an impossible task given their numbers, but rather to create an opening for escape. When a brief lull in the gunfire presents itself, he and Ellie sprint from cover, abandoning the truck and their supplies, running deeper into the urban maze of Pittsburgh's downtown. The hunter-controlled streets become a nightmarish gauntlet of survival. Joel and Ellie move through abandoned buildings, across rooftops, and through alleyways, constantly pursued by patrols that seem to know every hiding spot and shortcut. The hunters communicate via radio, calling out sightings and coordinating their search patterns. Joel's experience as a survivor and his own past as someone who did terrible things to stay alive gives him insight into how these predators think. He knows their tactics because he once employed similar methods himself. He leads Ellie through the urban environment with a combination of stealth and controlled violence, taking down isolated hunters silently when possible, avoiding larger groups when necessary. For Ellie, this is her first real exposure to the depths of human depravity in the post-outbreak world. The hunters aren't infected, aren't mindless creatures driven by fungal impulses. They're people who have chosen cruelty and murder as a survival strategy, and in many ways, this makes them more terrifying than any clicker. During one particularly intense encounter, Joel is grabbed from behind by a hunter he failed to detect. The man's hands close around Joel's throat, choking off his air supply as he's dragged backward. Joel struggles, but the hunter has position and leverage. In that critical moment, a gunshot cracks through the air. The hunter's grip loosens and he falls, blood spreading across his chest. Joel turns to see Ellie, her hands shaking, holding the pistol he'd given her for emergencies. Her face is pale with shock at what she's just done, at the reality of taking a human life. This moment marks a turning point in their relationship. Joel had been treating Ellie as cargo, as a job to complete, maintaining emotional distance. But now she's saved his life, proven herself not just a burden to protect, but a partner in survival. The walls Joel has built around himself, the barriers he's maintained to avoid caring about another person after losing his daughter, begin to crack. He doesn't thank her, doesn't make a speech, but something shifts in how he looks at her, in how he positions himself to better protect her as they continue through the hostile city. Their desperate flight through hunter territory leads them to a residential building where they hope to find temporary refuge and a route to the city's edge. As they clear rooms and search for supplies, they encounter two other survivors, brothers named Henry and Sam. Henry is in his late 20s, intelligent and resourceful, while Sam is roughly Ellie's age, a young boy trying to survive in impossible circumstances. The meeting is tense and hostile. Henry, having survived this long by trusting no one, immediately draws a weapon on Joel, ordering him to drop his gun. The standoff is precarious, two desperate groups of survivors meeting in a city where everyone is either predator or prey. Henry's distrust is entirely justified. In Pittsburgh, strangers are threats until proven otherwise, and even then, alliances are fragile and temporary. Joel attempts to de-escalate, pointing out that they're all trying to escape the hunters, that fighting each other only helps their mutual enemies. Henry is skeptical, but Sam's presence complicates his calculus. The boy is clearly exhausted and frightened, and Ellie's presence, another child in this nightmare, creates an unexpected common ground. The uneasy alliance that forms between the four survivors is born purely of necessity. Henry reveals that he and Sam have been trapped in Pittsburgh for weeks, unable to escape the hunter patrols that blanket the city. He's been searching for a way out, mapping patrol patterns and identifying weak points in the hunter's territorial control. Joel's experience and weapons, combined with Henry's knowledge of the local terrain, create an opportunity that neither group would have alone. They agree to work together, at least until they've escaped Pittsburgh, though trust remains minimal. Henry keeps his weapon close, and Joel does the same. As they plan their route, Ellie and Sam begin to connect, two kids finding comfort in each other's presence amid the adult world of violence and survival. Sam, it becomes apparent, is deaf, communicating through sign language that Henry translates. This disability has made their survival even more challenging, requiring Henry to be constantly vigilant since Sam cannot hear approaching threats. The group's escape route takes them through a section of the city where hunters have established a major stronghold. A large bookstore, its shelves long since looted of anything useful, has been converted into a hunter outpost and supply depot. Joel scouts the location and determines that avoiding it entirely would add days to their journey through territory they cannot afford to traverse. The decision is made to move through quickly and quietly, avoiding detection rather than engaging in a firefight they cannot win. The infiltration begins smoothly, with the group moving between shelves and using the building's layout to stay out of sight. However, the plan unravels when a hunter patrol returns unexpectedly, forcing the group to hide in positions that leave them separated and exposed. What follows is a tense sequence of coordinated stealth and sudden violence as they attempt to reunite and escape before the entire hunter force converges on their position. The bookstore becomes a battlefield as the hunters realize they have intruders. Alarms are raised and reinforcements pour in from adjacent buildings. Joel, Ellie, Henry, and Sam fight their way through the structure, using the environment to their advantage, toppling shelves to create barriers and escaping through back rooms and maintenance corridors. The hunters pursue relentlessly, their numbers seemingly endless. The group finally breaks free of the building, emerging into an alley where Henry reveals his planned escape route, the sewers. Pittsburgh's underground infrastructure, built during the city's industrial heyday, offers a network of tunnels that bypass the hunter-controlled streets. The entrance is concealed behind a locked maintenance door that Henry has already scouted. They descend into darkness, sealing the door behind them, finally escaping the immediate pursuit but trading one danger for another. The harrowing escape from the sewers of Pittsburgh leaves its mark, not just on their bodies, but on their spirits. That night, as the group seeks refuge, a quiet, heartbreaking conversation unfolds between Sam and Ellie. Sam, a child barely older than Ellie, confesses his deepest fear, the terror of becoming one of them, one of the infected. His voice, small and trembling in the dim light, betrays a profound innocence confronted by an unspeakable horror. Ellie, in turn, attempts to reassure him, to offer the fragile comfort of a child who has seen too much but still clings to hope. She tells him that the infected are simply dead, a way to rationalize the monstrous transformation. This moment, tender and tragic, underscores the unbearable weight placed upon these young survivors. However, the insidious cordyceps fungus has already begun its work. During their desperate dash through the sewers, Sam was bitten. A small wound, easily overlooked in the chaos, now carries the death sentence. The next morning, the grim reality sets in. Ellie, ever the protector, discovers the bite and tries to comfort Sam, to distract him from the inevitable. She reads him comic books, her voice a soothing balm against the encroaching darkness. She tells him that she understands, that she would never leave him. This poignant exchange highlights Ellie's burgeoning empathy and her desperate need to connect, to prevent another loss. But the fungus is relentless. Overnight, Sam succumbs to the infection, his transformation swift and merciless. He attacks Ellie, his once innocent eyes now clouded with the cordyceps' mindless aggression. The sudden shift from terrified child to ravenous monster is a brutal shock, a stark reminder of the world's unforgiving nature. Henry, Sam's older brother, is forced to make an impossible choice. With a trembling hand, he raises his pistol and shoots his infected brother, ending Sam's torment and preventing further harm. The gunshot echoes through the quiet morning, a sound of absolute finality. The weight of this act, the unthinkable trauma of killing his own brother, shatters Henry. Overwhelmed by grief, guilt, and the sheer despair of their existence, Henry turns the gun on himself, ending his own life in a tragic act of self-destruction. The two brothers who had fought so hard to survive together are gone in an instant, leaving Joel and Ellie to grapple with the profound shock and sorrow. The loss of Henry and Sam leaves a deep, indelible scar on Joel and Ellie. The silence that follows their deaths is deafening, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the brutal cost of survival. Their journey, once driven by a singular purpose, now carries an additional burden of grief. The world seems even colder, the stakes even higher. Joel, ever stoic, internalizes his pain, but the unspoken understanding between him and Ellie deepens. They continue westward, their path taking them through the desolate, snow-covered landscapes of the University of Eastern Colorado. Their objective remains clear: locate the Fireflies, the revolutionary militia group, and the research they promised regarding a cure. The university, once a vibrant center of learning, is now a silent, decaying monument to a bygone era. Its buildings eerily quiet, save for the occasional skittering of rats or the distant groan of an infected. As they navigate the snow-dusted campus, a sense of unease permeates the air. The university is not entirely deserted. Raiders, desperate and ruthless, have established a presence here, drawn by whatever dwindling resources might remain. Joel, ever vigilant, senses the danger, but the confrontation is inevitable. A brutal skirmish erupts, a chaotic exchange of gunfire and close-quarters combat. In the ensuing struggle, Joel is severely injured, impaled on a rebar, a jagged piece of metal piercing his abdomen. The wound is grievous, bleeding profusely, and his strength quickly wanes. Ellie, witnessing Joel's collapse, is thrust into an unimaginable position. The protector has fallen, and now the protected must become the protector. With Joel incapacitated and barely clinging to life, Ellie is forced to take on the mantle of caregiver, a role far too heavy for her young shoulders. For months, she becomes his sole nurse, his lifeline in a hostile world. They find refuge in a secluded, snow-covered cabin, a temporary sanctuary against the relentless winter and the ever-present threat of the infected and other survivors. Ellie's days are a grueling cycle of scavenging for food, hunting for medicine and keeping Joel warm. She learns to track deer, to set traps, to distill alcohol for antiseptic, her resourcefulness growing with every passing day. The responsibility weighs heavily on her, but her determination to save Joel is unwavering. She refuses to lose another person she cares about. This period of isolation and intense caregiving forges an unbreakable bond between them, solidifying their connection beyond that of mere escort and cargo. It is during these long, arduous months that Ellie truly comes into her own, transforming from a dependent child into a fierce, capable survivor. Her grief over Sam and Henry, coupled with the fear of losing Joel, fuels her resolve. She confronts her own vulnerability and emerges stronger, though undeniably hardened by the experience. Finally, after months of struggle and near-death experiences, Joel and Ellie reach Jackson, Wyoming. The site of the bustling, fortified settlement, a beacon of civilization in the desolate landscape, offers a glimmer of hope. Here, Joel is reunited with his brother, Tommy, a man who has found a measure of peace and purpose within the community. The reunion is bittersweet, marked by the relief of seeing family, but also by the unspoken acknowledgement of the years of hardship and loss that separate them. Tommy, now a leader in Jackson, offers Joel and Ellie a place, a chance to settle down, to escape the endless cycle of violence and survival. For Joel, the temptation to finally put down his rifle and embrace a semblance of normalcy is strong, especially with Ellie's safety in mind. However, the prospect of a permanent home in Jackson ignites a different kind of fear in Ellie. She overhears Joel discussing with Tommy the possibility of leaving her behind, of letting her live a normal life within the safety of the community while he continues his journey, or perhaps even stays in Jackson himself. This news shatters Ellie. She interprets it as abandonment, a betrayal of their shared mission. The idea of being left behind, of their journey ending before the Fireflies are found and a cure is pursued, is unbearable. For Ellie, their mission is not just about survival. It's about purpose, about making her immunity mean something. It's about honoring the sacrifices made, about preventing others from suffering the same fate as Sam and countless others. Driven by a potent mix of fear, anger, and a fierce sense of duty, Ellie runs away from Jackson, determined to continue their quest, even if it means doing so alone. Her flight underscores her deep-seated fear of being alone, of being discarded, and her unwavering conviction that her life, her immunity, has a greater purpose. Joel, in turn, is left to grapple with the consequences of his intentions, realizing the depth of Ellie's commitment and the profound impact their journey has had on her. Transition in from previous entry, perhaps a shot of Joel and Ellie on horseback, riding through autumn foliage, fading to a snowy landscape. As autumn's vibrant hues gave way to the biting chill of winter, the journey of Joel and Ellie pressed onward, their destination now fixed on the University of Eastern Colorado. It was late 2033, and their hope, fragile yet persistent, was to finally locate the Fireflies, the revolutionary militia group believed to be working on a cure for the cordyceps brain infection. Their long and arduous trek had been punctuated by harrowing encounters with infected and hostile survivors, but the promise of a vaccine, and with it, a chance at redemption for Joel and a future for Ellie, fueled their every step. The university, nestled amidst the snow-dusted Rockies, was rumored to be one of the Fireflies' last known research outposts. Upon their arrival, however, the scene that greeted them was one of stark desolation. The once bustling campus, a beacon of learning and innovation, was now a silent, snow-covered graveyard. Buildings stood like skeletal sentinels against the gray winter sky, their windows shattered, their interiors exposed to the elements. A thick blanket of pristine white snow muffled all sound, save for the crunch of their boots and the whisper of the wind. It was immediately apparent that no one had called this place home for a long time. The air itself seemed to carry the weight of abandonment, a palpable sense of a struggle that had long since concluded. Evidence of this past conflict was everywhere. Overturned vehicles half buried in drifts, bullet-riddled walls, and the skeletal remains of makeshift barricades hinted at a desperate last stand. The silence was unnerving, a stark contrast to the lively, if dangerous, environments they had navigated thus far. Joel, ever the pragmatist, moved with a heightened sense of caution, his eyes scanning for any sign of movement, any indication of lingering threats, or, more importantly, any trace of the Fireflies. Ellie, for her part, felt a familiar pang of disappointment. Each lead, each glimmer of hope, seemed to inevitably lead to another dead end, another confirmation of the world's relentless decay. Yet, she maintained her outward composure, her youthful resilience, a stark counterpoint to Joel's weary pragmatism. Their meticulous search of the abandoned campus eventually yielded a crucial discovery. Deep within one of the university's science buildings, amidst overturned furniture and scattered research papers, they found undeniable evidence of the Firefly's recent presence. Medical supplies, specifically those bearing the distinctive Firefly emblem, were strewn about, along with specialized laboratory equipment that spoke to advanced biological research. There were vials, petri dishes, and even a partially disassembled microscope, all indicating that this was indeed a Firefly research facility and that they had been working on something significant. Discovery, while confirming their destination, also heightened the mystery. Where had they gone? Why had they left so abruptly, abandoning such valuable resources? The answer came in the form of a forgotten audio recorder tucked away on a dusty desk. Ellie, with her keen eye for detail, spotted it first. With a hopeful click, she activated the device, and a disembodied voice, tired but resolute, filled the cavernous room. The recording detailed a harrowing account of the Firefly's struggles at the university, including repeated attacks from infected and other hostile survivor groups, leading to a critical shortage of resources and personnel. The voice, identified as a Firefly doctor, explained their difficult decision to relocate their operations. Their new destination, the recording revealed, was a hospital in Salt Lake City, a more secure and better equipped facility where they hoped to continue their work on a vaccine. This was it, the breakthrough they had been searching for. A new lead, a concrete destination, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose. Joel, despite his characteristic stoicism, felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. This wasn't just another wild goose chase, this was a tangible path forward. However, their brief moment of triumph was abruptly shattered. As Joel and Ellie prepared to leave the university, their minds already focused on the arduous journey to Salt Lake City, they were ambushed. A group of raiders, hardened and desperate survivors, had been lying in wait, drawn by the same rumors of the Firefly's presence, or perhaps simply by the prospect of scavenging anything of value. The attack was sudden and brutal. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the desolate campus, and arrows whizzed past, narrowly missing their targets. Joel, his instincts honed by years of survival, immediately sprang into action. He pushed Ellie behind cover, his shotgun barking in response to the attackers. The raiders, numbering at least half a dozen, were relentless, their movements swift and coordinated, indicating a degree of experience that made them particularly dangerous. They were not just opportunistic scavengers, but a well-organized and ruthless gang. Joel, ever the protector, fought with a ferocity born of desperation. He moved with a practiced efficiency, taking down several raiders with precise shots and brutal hand-to-hand combat. His primary focus was Ellie's safety, his body a shield between her and the onslaught. He used the environment to his advantage, ducking behind overturned carts and crumbling walls, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Ellie, though young, was no stranger to violence. She provided cover with her own pistol, her shots surprisingly accurate for her age, but the sheer number of attackers began to overwhelm them. The fight was a blur of gunfire, shouts, and the sickening thud of bodies hitting the snow. In the chaos of the close-quarters combat, a moment of tragic miscalculation occurred. As Joel engaged a particularly aggressive raider, another, unseen until it was too late, lunged from the side. Joel, distracted, was unable to fully evade the attack. A jagged piece of rebar, part of a collapsed structure, pierced his side, impaling him with a sickening crunch. A gasp of pain escaped his lips, and his movements faltered. The wound was severe, gushing blood, and the pain was immediate and excruciating. The raider responsible for the blow was quickly dispatched by Joel in a desperate retaliatory strike, but the damage was done. The fight instantly shifted. Joel, severely wounded, was no longer the unstoppable force he had been moments before. His strength was ebbing, and his focus was now divided between fighting and simply staying conscious. Ellie, witnessing Joel's horrific injury, felt a surge of terror. The sight of the rebar protruding from his side, the crimson stain spreading rapidly across his jacket, galvanized her. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that if they stayed, they would both die. Her youthful exuberance was replaced by a grim determination. She grabbed Joel, half dragging, half supporting him, urging him to move. Joel, his face contorted in pain, leaned heavily on her, his legs threatening to give out. Together, they stumbled through the snow-covered campus, the remaining raiders hot on their heels, their shouts of triumph turning to frustrated rage as their prey began to slip away. Ellie, despite her fear, kept her head. She knew the layout of the campus from their earlier exploration and instinctively led them towards a less guarded exit, a broken fence line at the perimeter. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter as they put more distance between themselves and their attackers, but the danger was far from over. They finally burst free of the university grounds, scrambling onto their horses, which had been tethered nearby. Joel, barely conscious, slumped forward in the saddle, his grip on the reins slack. Blood continued to pour from his wound, staining the snow a vivid red. Ellie, her heart pounding, urged her horse forward, leading Joel's horse by its bridle. They rode blindly, desperately, through the deepening snow, the chill wind biting at their faces. The landscape was a blur of white and gray, bare trees reaching like skeletal fingers towards the overcast sky. Joel's breathing was shallow and ragged, each jolt of the horse sending fresh waves of agony through him. He was losing blood rapidly, and his body temperature was dropping dangerously low. Ellie, glancing back at his pale, sweat-slicked face, knew she had to find shelter, and quickly. After what felt like an eternity, as dusk began to settle and the cold intensified, Ellie spotted a faint wisp of smoke rising from a cluster of trees in the distance. It was a risky gamble, but she had no other choice. With renewed determination, she steered their horses towards the smoke, hoping against hope that it wasn't another trap. The smoke led them to an abandoned house, nestled deep within a snow-covered wooded area. It was small, dilapidated, but crucially it had a fireplace and, surprisingly, a small pile of firewood inside. The structure, though weathered, offered a semblance of protection from the relentless cold and the lurking dangers of the wilderness. With immense effort, Ellie managed to get Joel off his horse and into the relative warmth of the house. He collapsed onto the dusty floor, groaning faintly, his eyes fluttering shut. The severity of Joel's condition was immediately apparent. His breathing was shallow, his skin clammy, and the wound in his side was still bleeding profusely. Ellie, despite her inexperience, knew she had to act. She carefully removed Joel's blood-soaked jacket, exposing the gruesome injury. The rebar had pierced deep, and the surrounding flesh was already showing signs of bruising and swelling. Using what little medical knowledge she possessed, gleaned from books and observation, she attempted to treat the wound. She tore strips from her own shirt, fashioning makeshift bandages, and applied pressure to stem the bleeding. She cleaned the area as best she could with snow and what little clean water she could find, but the wound was deep and clearly infected. Joel's condition, far from improving, rapidly deteriorated. He drifted in and out of consciousness, his fever spiking, his body racked with shivers. The days that followed were a blur of desperate struggle for Ellie. The harsh winter environment became her adversary, testing her limits in ways she had never imagined. Joel, delirious and weak, was completely dependent on her. She spent weeks caring for him, a relentless cycle of changing bandages, trying to keep him warm, and constantly hunting for food and supplies in the unforgiving snow. The abandoned house, though a temporary refuge, offered little in the way of sustenance. Every morning, Ellie would venture out into the frozen wilderness, her breath misting in the frigid air, her small hunting rifle clutched tightly in her gloved hands. She learned to track animals in the snow, her senses heightened by the gnawing fear of Joel's impending death. She hunted rabbits, squirrels, and even deer, her aim growing steadily more precise with each passing day. The meat, though tough and often scarce, provided the vital protein they both needed to survive. She also scavenged for berries, roots, and anything else edible she could find, often returning to the house with numb fingers and toes, her face chapped by the wind. The responsibility weighed heavily on her young shoulders. She was no longer just Joel's traveling companion, but his sole caregiver, his lifeline. The fear of losing him, of being utterly alone in this brutal world, was a constant companion. Yet, she persevered. Her innate resilience, her fierce determination to survive, and her growing bond with Joel fueled her efforts. She would return to the house, exhausted but triumphant, her latest kill slung over her shoulder, and immediately set about preparing a meager meal, carefully feeding small portions to the ailing Joel. She would sit by his side, talking to him, even when he was unresponsive, telling him stories, recounting her day's hunt, anything to keep the silence at bay and to remind herself, and him, that they were still alive. The brutal winter, though a formidable foe, was also shaping Ellie in profound ways, forging her into a survivor of unparalleled strength and resourcefulness. Each successful hunt, each day Joel clung to life, was a small victory against the overwhelming odds. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in a pristine, yet deadly white, and within the confines of that small, isolated house, a young girl fought desperately to keep the last vestige of her family alive. Ellie, now alone and vulnerable in the harsh Colorado winter of late 2033, finds herself in a desperate struggle for survival. The brutal cold, the ever-present threat of the infected, and the dwindling resources force her to make increasingly perilous decisions. Her journey leads her to a small isolated settlement, seemingly a refuge from the chaos of the outside world. It is here that she encounters David, a charismatic and seemingly benevolent leader, and his companion, James. Initially, their interaction appears to be a chance encounter, a desperate plea for medicine to save Joel's life. Ellie, ever resourceful and driven by her unwavering loyalty to Joel, attempts to barter for the desperately needed antibiotics. She offers a freshly killed deer, a valuable commodity in this desolate landscape. However, the seemingly innocuous exchange quickly devolves into a chilling realization for Ellie. David, with his unsettlingly calm demeanor, reveals his true nature. He recognizes the deer as one of his own, taken from his hunting grounds, and a tense standoff ensues. Ellie's quick thinking and fighting prowess, honed by years of surviving in this unforgiving world, allow her to escape the immediate confrontation, but not without consequence. She is now aware of David's true intentions and the sinister undercurrents of his community. This encounter is a pivotal moment for Ellie, forcing her to confront the depths of human depravity even beyond the infected. She has faced monstrous creatures, but now she faces the monstrousness within humanity itself, a more insidious and terrifying threat. David, it becomes clear, is not merely a hunter or a survivor. He is the leader of a group of cannibals, a horrifying truth that slowly unravels for Ellie. His community, outwardly appearing as a sanctuary, is in fact a trap, a place where desperate survivors are lured in, only to become their next meal. This revelation is a stark reminder of the moral decay that has gripped the world. where the lines between right and wrong have blurred, and survival often comes at the cost of one's humanity. Ellie's initial relief at finding other survivors quickly turns to terror as she understands the true nature of David's hospitality. The subsequent chase through the snow-laden forest is a desperate fight for survival. Ellie, despite her youth, displays an extraordinary resilience and cunning. She uses the environment to her advantage, employing stealth and misdirection to evade David and his men. The harsh winter landscape, which was once a backdrop to her desperate search for medicine, now becomes a treacherous battleground. Every shadow, every gust of wind could conceal a threat. The tension is palpable, a constant thrum of fear and adrenaline as Ellie battles not only the elements but also the relentless pursuit of David's group. She is a lone wolf, hunted by a pack of predators, and the odds are stacked against her. Eventually, Ellie is cornered and captured. The scene in the abandoned diner where David attempts to manipulate and indoctrinate her is particularly disturbing. He sees something in Ellie, a strength and a ferocity that he admires, and he attempts to bring her into his fold, to make her one of them. He preys on her vulnerability, her isolation, and her desperation, offering her a twisted sense of belonging. His words are insidious, designed to break her spirit and bend her to his will. He paints a picture of a world where their actions are justified, where survival dictates all morality. But Ellie, despite her fear, refuses to be broken. Her spirit remains defiant, fueled by her unwavering love for Joel and her innate sense of right and wrong. She fights back, not just physically, but psychologically, resisting David's attempts to corrupt her. Meanwhile, Joel, slowly but surely, begins his arduous recovery. The antibiotics, thanks to Ellie's bravery, are doing their work, but his wounds are severe, and his body is weakened. His recovery is not just physical, it is also a psychological battle. He is consumed by guilt and fear, knowing that Ellie is out there, alone and in danger, all because he was incapacitated. The thought of her facing the horrors of this world without him is a torment. His determination to find her, to protect her, becomes the driving force behind his recovery. He pushes himself beyond his limits, ignoring the pain and the weakness, fueled by a primal need to rescue his surrogate daughter. His journey to find Ellie is a testament to his unwavering commitment. He tracks her through the snow, following any sign, any clue, no matter how faint. The harsh winter conditions, which had nearly claimed his life, now become a backdrop to his desperate search. He is a man on a mission, a force of nature driven by love and a fierce protectiveness. The world may be broken, filled with monsters, both infected and human, but Joel's resolve remains unbroken. He is a predator himself, now hunting those who would harm his young. The climax of this harrowing ordeal unfolds as Joel finally catches up to David's group. The confrontation is brutal and visceral, a desperate struggle for survival against overwhelming odds. Joel, still weakened but fueled by an almost superhuman rage, unleashes a torrent of violence against David's men. He is a force of nature, a vengeful father figure tearing through anyone who stands between him and Ellie. The scene is a stark reminder of the lengths to which a parent will go to protect their child, even in a world where morality has become a luxury. The final confrontation between Joel and David is particularly intense. Joel, driven by a primal fury, brutally dispatches David, ending his reign of terror. This act is not simply about revenge, it is about protecting Ellie, about eliminating a threat that would have consumed her. The violence, while graphic, is portrayed as a necessary evil, a reflection of the brutal realities of their world. It is a moment where Joel fully embraces his role as Ellie's protector, even if it means resorting to extreme measures. The scene is a powerful depiction of the dark side of love and protection, where the line between hero and monster can become dangerously blurred. Ellie, traumatized by her ordeal, is rescued by Joel. The reunion is a moment of profound emotional release, a culmination of weeks of fear, pain, and desperation. Joel holds her close, offering comfort and reassurance, a silent promise that he will never let anything happen to her again. This moment solidifies their bond, deepening their connection beyond that of mere companions. They are now a family, forged in the crucible of shared trauma and unwavering loyalty. The experience leaves an indelible mark on Ellie, a scar that will shape her future, but it also strengthens her resolve and her understanding of the world's harsh realities. This winter, though brutal, ultimately serves to solidify the unbreakable bond between Joel and Ellie, preparing them for the even greater challenges that lie ahead on their perilous journey across a broken America. As the brutal winter of 2033 gives way to a fragile spring, Joel and Ellie, having endured unimaginable hardship and loss, finally set their sights on the last known bastion of hope, the Fireflies. Their journey, which began with a desperate plea to transport a single, seemingly ordinary girl across a ravaged continent, now culminates in the desolate beauty of Salt Lake City. It is here, in the early months of 2034, that the true devastating purpose of Ellie's immunity will be revealed, and Joel's unwavering commitment to her will be tested in the most profound way imaginable. Upon their arrival in Salt Lake City, the The landscape itself speaks volumes about the enduring struggle against the cordyceps brain infection. The once vibrant metropolis now lies in a state of profound dilapidation, a stark testament to the 2 decades of societal collapse that have transpired since Outbreak Day. Skyscrapers stand like skeletal fingers against the sky, their windows shattered, their facades scarred by neglect and the relentless march of time. Rust stains streak down concrete, and vegetation, unchecked and wild, reclaims every available surface, transforming urban canyons into overgrown jungles. Yet, amidst this decay, there are subtle, almost imperceptible signs of life, indicators that this city, unlike so many others, is not entirely abandoned. These are the markers of Firefly presence, carefully placed symbols and patrols that betray a concerted effort to maintain a foothold in this strategic location. Joel, with his seasoned eye for danger and his encyclopedic knowledge of survival, immediately recognizes these telltale signs. He understands that while the Fireflies represent their best chance at a cure, they also represent a significant, unpredictable force, one that could either offer salvation or pose an entirely new threat. Navigating the flooded tunnels and abandoned buildings of Salt Lake City proves to be a treacherous endeavor. The city's infrastructure, once a marvel of engineering, has succumbed to years of neglect. Subterranean passages designed to facilitate movement are now choked with stagnant water, their depths concealing unseen hazards. The air in these confined spaces is heavy with the scent of mildew and decay, a constant reminder of the world that was and the world that now is. Joel, ever the pragmatist, leads Ellie through these submerged labyrinths, his flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive darkness, illuminating the debris and the occasional skeletal remains that serve as grim milestones of past tragedies. Above ground, the abandoned buildings offer a different kind of challenge. Their interiors are a maze of collapsed floors, precarious stairwells, and the ever-present threat of infected lurking in the shadows. Each step is a calculated risk, each creak of a floorboard a potential harbinger of danger. They move with a practiced efficiency, a silent understanding forged through countless close calls and shared struggles. Ellie, no longer the naive child who began this journey, has become a formidable survivor in her own right, her instincts honed, her resolve hardened. She follows Joel's lead, her gaze sharp, her weapon ready, a silent sentinel in a world that demands constant vigilance. Their progress, however painstakingly achieved, is abruptly halted near the hospital, the very destination that has driven their arduous journey. A sudden, violent ambush erupts from the shadows, a coordinated attack by a group of Firefly patrols. The Fireflies, perhaps alerted by their movements or simply conducting their routine sweeps, are a well-trained and disciplined force, a stark contrast to the marauding bandits and desperate cannibals Joel and Ellie have encountered previously. The initial volley of gunfire is disorienting, a cacophony that shatters the fragile peace of the dilapidated city. Joel, reacting with the lightning-fast reflexes of a man who has lived on the knife's edge for 2 decades, immediately shoves Ellie behind cover, drawing his own weapon. The ensuing firefight is brief but intense, a desperate struggle against overwhelming odds. The Fireflies, driven by their unwavering mission, show no hesitation, no quarter. In the chaos of the ambush, Ellie, despite her newfound resilience, is tragically knocked unconscious. A blunt force trauma, perhaps from a stray blow during the struggle or a fall during Joel's protective maneuver, renders her limp and vulnerable. Her small body slumps to the ground, her immunity, her very purpose, momentarily forgotten in the brutal reality of the confrontation. Joel, witnessing her fall, feels a primal surge of terror and fury. He fights with renewed ferocity, a desperate attempt to protect the one person he has allowed himself to care for again. But even Joel, a man who has defied death countless times, is not invincible. The Fireflies, with their superior numbers and tactical advantage, eventually overwhelm him. A blow to the head, a swift, brutal incapacitation, brings him down. Darkness engulfs him, the last image in his mind being Ellie's unconscious form, a stark reminder of his failure to protect her in that critical moment. When Joel and Ellie finally regain consciousness, they find themselves in an unfamiliar, yet distinctly medical environment. They have been taken to the Firefly Hospital, which, upon closer inspection, reveals itself to be the former Salt Lake City Hospital. The once bustling medical facility now bears the scars of the apocalypse, yet within its walls there is a surprising level of functionality. Lights hum, medical equipment, though dated, appears operational, and the air, while still carrying the faint scent of antiseptic and decay, is cleaner than the outside world. Joel awakens first, his head throbbing, his senses slowly returning. He finds himself in a sterile-looking room, lying on a narrow bed. His wrists are restrained, bound securely to the bed frame, a clear indication that he is a prisoner. The realization sends a jolt of adrenaline through him, but his years of experience teach him to remain calm, to assess his surroundings before reacting. He strains against the restraints, testing their strength, his mind racing, trying to piece together the events that led him here. His immediate concern, his only concern, is Ellie. It is at this critical juncture that Marlene enters Joel's room. Marlene, the leader of the Fireflies, is a figure of immense authority and unwavering conviction. Her presence is commanding, her demeanor serious, yet there is a subtle weariness in her eyes, a testament to the immense burden she carries. She approaches Joel's bed, her expression unreadable, and calmly informs him of their location. She explains that they are indeed in the Firefly Hospital, the last operational medical facility under their control. Her voice, though steady, carries an underlying tension, a hint of the difficult conversation that is about to unfold. She then addresses Joel's unspoken question, confirming Ellie's condition. She assures him that Ellie is alive, and more importantly, that she is safe. This brief reassurance, however, is merely a prelude to the devastating revelation that follows. Marlene, without preamble, explains the Firefly's plan for Ellie. Her words, though delivered with a clinical detachment, carry the weight of a death sentence. She reveals that the Fireflies intend to operate on Ellie, a surgical procedure that will, without question, kill her. The purpose of this fatal intervention is to create a cure for the cordyceps brain infection, the very blight that has decimated humanity. The gravity of her statement hangs heavy in the air, a chilling pronouncement that shatters Joel's fragile hope. He listens, his heart pounding, his mind struggling to reconcile the horrific implications of her words. The girl he has risked everything for, the girl he has come to love, is to be sacrificed for the greater good. Marlene, sensing Joel's shock and disbelief, elaborates on the scientific rationale behind their decision. She explains that the cordyceps in Ellie's brain has grown into a unique strain, one that has somehow integrated with her neural pathways without transforming her into an infected. This peculiar biological anomaly, this unique adaptation of the fungus, is what grants Ellie her immunity. It is not merely a resistance to infection, but an active, ongoing process within her brain, a living, breathing phenomenon that holds the key to humanity's salvation. The Firefly's top surgeon, a brilliant but ruthless individual named Dr. Jerry Anderson, has meticulously studied Ellie's medical records, a process facilitated by Tess's initial contact with the Fireflies in Boston, and has concluded that her immunity is not a simple genetic fluke, but a complex biological process that can be harnessed. Marlene then delivers the final, crushing blow. She states with unwavering conviction that the only way to extract the cordyceps for a cure is through a fatal brain surgery. The unique strain of the fungus, intertwined as it is with Ellie's brain tissue, cannot be removed without destroying the very organ that sustains her life. There is no other way, no less invasive procedure, no alternative method that could yield the desired results. Her words are absolute, leaving no room for negotiation or compromise. The Fireflies, after years of tireless research and countless failed attempts, have arrived at this grim conclusion, a decision born out of desperation and a fervent belief in the necessity of their cause. Joel, his heart a raw, bleeding wound, pleads with Marlene. His voice, usually gruff and unyielding, is now laced with a desperate urgency, a raw vulnerability that he rarely displays. He begs her to find another way, to consider alternatives, to spare Ellie from this horrific fate. He argues that there must be a different path, a less brutal solution, a way to save humanity without sacrificing an innocent child. His arguments are not just born of his love for Ellie, but also from a deep-seated skepticism of the Firefly's methods, a cynical understanding of the often brutal realities of this post-apocalyptic world. He knows that even with a cure, humanity's problems are far from over, and the cost of this particular cure is simply too high. Marlene, however, remains unmoved. Her resolve is ironclad, her conviction absolute. She refuses Joel's pleas, stating with a chilling finality that Ellie's sacrifice is not only necessary but inevitable for the very survival of humanity. She believes that Ellie's life, though precious, is ultimately secondary to the collective good, that her death will pave the way for a new beginning, a chance for the world to heal and rebuild. Her decision, while agonizing, is rooted in a utilitarian philosophy, a belief that the greatest good for the greatest number justifies even the most profound individual sacrifice. The weight of 2 decades of human suffering, of countless lives lost to the infection, rests heavily on her shoulders, and in her eyes, Ellie represents the ultimate solution to that suffering. Joel, despite the debilitating injury he sustained from the rebar and the subsequent unconsciousness, stirs. His eyes flutter open, the sterile white ceiling of the Firefly medical bay slowly coming into focus. A searing pain lances through his abdomen, a stark reminder of his near-fatal fall. He finds himself restrained, his wrists and ankles tightly bound to the gurney. The metallic tang of blood is faint in the air, mingling with the antiseptic scent of the hospital. His mind, still groggy, begins to piece together the fragments of recent memory. The fall, the Fireflies, Ellie. A primal fear, cold and sharp, cuts through the lingering haze of the sedatives. Ellie is here, somewhere in this building, and she is in danger. The thought acts like a jolt of pure adrenaline, overriding the pain and the lingering effects of whatever they had given him. He strains against the restraints, muscles screaming in protest. The bindings, though tight, are not infallible, and Joel's sheer will to protect Ellie provides him with an almost superhuman strength. With a grunt of effort, he manages to work one hand free, then the other. The ropes fall away, leaving angry red marks on his wrists, but he barely notices. His gaze sweeps the room, searching for anything, any advantage. His eyes land on a small, gleaming object on a nearby medical tray, a scalpel. Its sharp, surgical edge glints under the fluorescent lights. He snatches it, the cold metal a familiar weight in his hand, a weapon in a place of healing. Just as he secures his makeshift blade, the door to the medical bay slides open. Marlene stands there, her face a mask of grim determination, a pistol held loosely at her side. Her expression hardens when she sees Joel, free and armed. "Joel," she says, her voice devoid of its usual warmth, laced with a weary resignation. "It didn't have to be this way." Joel doesn't respond, his focus entirely on the weapon in his hand and the woman who stands between him and Ellie. He lunges, a blur of motion despite his injuries, the scalpel aimed not to kill, but to incapacitate, to clear his path. Marlene, though surprised, is a seasoned fighter. She reacts quickly, raising her pistol. A shot rings out, but Joel is already moving, using the gurney as a shield, the bullet embedding itself in the mattress. He closes the distance and the fight is brutal, quick. Marlene, caught off guard by his ferocity, finds herself disarmed, the scalpel pressed against her throat. "Where is she?" Joel demands, his voice a low growl, barely a whisper of the man he once was, now a force of nature driven by a singular purpose. Marlene, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and defiance, refuses to answer directly. "You don't understand, Joel," she pleads, her voice strained. "This is for humanity." But Joel is beyond reason, beyond appeals to the greater good. He needs Ellie, and anyone who stands in his way will fall. He shoves Marlene aside, not killing her yet, but leaving her stunned and disoriented. His priority is Ellie, and he knows time is of the essence. He bursts out of the medical bay, the scalpel still clutched in his hand, and begins his desperate assault on the hospital. The lower floors of the hospital are a labyrinth of sterile corridors and closed doors, but Joel moves with a predator's instinct, his senses heightened by adrenaline and fear. He knows the Fireflies will be alerted to his escape, and he anticipates resistance. He finds it almost immediately. Two Firefly soldiers, armed with assault rifles, round a corner, their conversation about the unforeseen complication cut short by Joel's sudden appearance. He doesn't hesitate. He uses the environment to his advantage, ducking behind a gurney, then emerging to take down one soldier with a swift, brutal strike to the head. The other, startled, raises his weapon, but Joel is already on him, disarming him with a practiced ease born of years of survival. The scalpel finds its mark, a quick, efficient end to the threat. Joel continues his relentless advance, a ghost in the sterile halls. He favors stealth when possible, slipping through shadow doorways, silently dispatching sentries with chokeholds or the precise, deadly thrust of his scalpel. When stealth is not an option, he engages in brutal, close-quarters combat, using his environment to his advantage, turning medical equipment into improvised weapons, and his raw, unyielding strength to overcome superior numbers. The Fireflies, though well-trained, are not prepared for the sheer, unbridled fury of a man fighting for the only thing he has left in the world. He hears snippets of their conversations through closed doors, their worried whispers about the procedure and the cure. Each word fuels his rage, solidifying his resolve. He overhears one Firefly lamenting the loss of the test subject's guardian, confirming his worst fears. They were preparing to operate on Ellie. His path is marked by the fallen, Firefly soldiers left unconscious or worse, their weapons confiscated and added to his growing arsenal. He finds a pistol, then a shotgun, each new acquisition increasing his lethality. The hospital, once a symbol of hope and healing, becomes a battlefield, a testament to the lengths Joel will go to protect his surrogate daughter. He navigates the stairwells, ascending floor by floor, the sounds of distant alarms and shouts growing louder. He knows he's getting closer. Finally, he reaches the operating theater, the heavy double doors a stark barrier between him and Ellie. He can hear voices inside, hushed and urgent. He kicks the doors open, the sudden crash echoing through the sterile space. The scene before him is a nightmare made real. Ellie lies unconscious on an operating table, her small body draped in a surgical gown, an IV drip connected to her arm. The head surgeon, a man in scrubs and a surgical mask, stands over her, instruments laid out on a tray. Two other medical staff, also in scrubs, stand nearby, preparing for the procedure. The surgeon looks up, startled, his eyes widening in disbelief as he sees Joel, bloodied and wild-eyed, a shotgun clutched in his hands. "Stop!" Joel roars, his voice raw with emotion. The surgeon, recovering from his shock, tries to assert his authority. "Get out! You're contaminating the sterile field," he shouts, gesturing frantically. But Joel is beyond words. He raises the shotgun. "Get away from her," he snarls, his finger tightening on the trigger. The surgeon, realizing the gravity of the situation, attempts to reason. "We can save humanity. She's immune. We need to extract the cordyceps from her brain." Joel doesn't care about humanity. He cares about Ellie. He fires. The shotgun blast rips through the air, striking the head surgeon in the chest. The two other medical staff scream, their faces contorted in terror. They make a move to flee, but Joel is too fast, too efficient. He brings the butt of the shotgun down on one, then the other, incapacitating them both. He doesn't kill them, not yet, but he ensures they are no longer a threat. He then turns his attention back to Ellie, his heart pounding in his chest. He rushes to her side, gently checking her pulse, his hand trembling. She's alive, but so vulnerable. Just as he begins to untie her, the operating room doors burst open again. It's Marlene, her face a mixture of fury and despair, a pistol once again in her hand. "Joel, don't do this," she pleads, her voice cracking. "You're making a mistake. She'll die for nothing." Joel looks at her, his eyes cold and hard. He remembers her words from earlier, her willingness to sacrifice Ellie for a cure. He remembers the pain, the fear, the desperation he felt when he thought he had lost her. He remembers Sarah. He raises the shotgun, aiming directly at Marlene. "You'd just come after her," he says, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. He pulls the trigger. Marlene falls, a single, fatal shot silencing her pleas and her vision for humanity. With Marlene gone, the last obstacle removed, Joel turns his full attention to Ellie. He carefully lifts her unconscious form from the operating table, cradling her close. She feels impossibly light in his arms, her head resting against his shoulder. He carries her out of the operating room, the sounds of his rampage now replaced by a chilling silence. He moves through the hospital, retracing his steps, his pace urgent but careful, protecting Ellie from any further harm. He passes the fallen Fireflies, their bodies a testament to his desperate love. He reaches the hospital's parking garage, the air thick with the smell of exhaust and concrete. He spots a Firefly vehicle, a Jeep, its keys still in the ignition. He carefully places Ellie in the passenger seat, securing her as best he can. He climbs into the driver's seat, his hands gripping the steering wheel, his eyes scanning the perimeter for any lingering threats. The engine roars to life, a powerful sound that cuts through the silence of the garage. He drives away, leaving the hospital, the Fireflies, and the shattered dream of a cure behind him. As they drive, the sun begins to rise, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape. Ellie remains unconscious, her breathing shallow but steady. Joel glances at her, his heart heavy with the weight of his actions, but also with a fierce, protective love. He knows what he has done, and he knows he will have to live with it. He also knows he will have to explain it to Ellie. When she finally stirs, her eyes fluttering open, she looks at him, her gaze hazy. "Joel?" she whispers, her voice weak. "What happened?" Joel takes a deep breath, the lie already forming on his tongue. He knows he cannot tell her the truth, not yet, perhaps never. The truth would shatter her, burden her with an unbearable guilt. He looks at her, his face carefully neutral. "The Fireflies," he begins, his voice steady. "They ran some tests. They said there were dozens of others like you, immune. But they couldn't make a cure. They stopped looking for one." He pauses, letting the lie sink in, letting it become her reality. "We're going home, kiddo," he says, his voice softening, a promise in his words. Ellie, still disoriented, accepts his words without question, her trust in him absolute. The lie, born of love and desperation, becomes the foundation of their future, a secret that will haunt Joel and shape their relationship for years to come. The world, unknowingly, has been denied its cure, but Joel has saved his world, his Ellie, and that, for him, is all that matters. Following the harrowing journey across a ravaged America and the morally ambiguous choices made at the Firefly Hospital, Joel and Ellie finally found a semblance of peace. It's now 2034, and our timeline brings us to the Jackson settlement in Wyoming, a thriving community that has managed to carve out a sustainable existence amidst the chaos of the cordyceps brain infection. Here, Joel and Ellie attempt to build a new life, one that, for a time, feels almost normal. Upon their arrival, Joel and Ellie are integrated into the Jackson community, which is led by Maria Miller, Joel's sister-in-law, and her husband, Tommy, Joel's brother. This established connection provides them with an immediate sense of belonging and security, a stark contrast to the constant threat they faced on the road. The settlement itself is a marvel of post-apocalyptic ingenuity, utilizing hydroelectric power from a nearby dam to provide electricity, and cultivating crops and raising livestock within its fortified walls. This infrastructure allows for a quality of life rarely seen in the infected world, offering hot meals, warm beds, and a sense of routine that both Joel and Ellie desperately need. Initially, they share a living space, likely a small apartment or room provided by the community as new arrivals often do. This initial period is characterized by a fragile truce between them, a quiet acknowledgement of their shared trauma and the unspoken weight of Joel's lie regarding the Fireflies. Joel, ever the protector, ensures Ellie has everything she needs, from basic necessities to a sense of safety that he had so fiercely fought to provide. Ellie, for her part, tries to adapt, observing the other teenagers and children, a world she had largely been denied during her years of survival. As they settle in and prove their worth to the community, Joel and Ellie are eventually granted their own house within Jackson. This is a significant step, symbolizing a deeper commitment to their new home and a desire for a more normalized existence. The house, while modest, offers them privacy and a space to truly call their own. It's here that the domesticity of their new lives begins to take root. Joel, ever practical and still driven by a need to contribute and protect, resumes his patrol duties for the Jackson community. These patrols are essential for the settlement's survival, involving scouting for infected, clearing out potential threats, and maintaining the security perimeter. These are tasks Joel is uniquely suited for, his years of brutal experience making him an invaluable asset. He often goes out with Tommy or other seasoned members of the community, his skills as a survivor put to good use in a structured and purposeful way. These patrols, while dangerous, offer Joel a sense of purpose beyond simply protecting Ellie, a way to contribute to a larger good. However, beneath the surface of this newfound peace, the wounds of their past continue to fester, particularly for Ellie. The lie Joel told her about the Fireflies, that they had given up on finding a cure, and that there were many other immune people, weighs heavily on her. She instinctively knows something is wrong, a gut feeling that gnaws at her, even if she can't articulate the precise nature of Joel's deception. This unspoken truth creates a growing chasm between them, transforming their once unbreakable bond into something strained and fragile. Ellie, who had once clung to Joel as her sole protector and confidant, begins to pull away, her emotional distance a silent protest against his perceived betrayal. The vibrant, often sarcastic girl who had faced down hordes of infected and ruthless cannibals with unwavering courage now carries a deep-seated hurt that manifests as quiet resentment. She struggles to reconcile the image of the man who saved her life with the man who seemingly robbed her of her purpose. This internal conflict is a constant companion, coloring her interactions with Joel and making their shared home feel less like a sanctuary and more like a cage of unspoken truths. As the years pass, this emotional distance between Ellie and Joel only grows. She begins to spend more and Jackson, seeking solace and connection with people her own age. Among these new acquaintances are Dina and Jesse, two other teenagers who have grown up within the relative safety of the settlement. Dina, with her quick wit and adventurous spirit, immediately sparks a connection with Ellie. Jesse, a loyal and good-natured young man, also becomes a close friend, often acting as a grounding presence within their trio. These relationships offer Ellie an escape from the suffocating weight of her unresolved issues with Joel. With Dina and Jesse, she can be a normal teenager, laughing, teasing, and experiencing the joys and frustrations of adolescence, something she had been deprived of for so long. They go on small excursions within the safe zones of Jackson, sharing stories, dreams, and the mundane details of their lives. These friendships become a vital lifeline for Ellie, providing her with a sense of belonging and understanding that she feels is increasingly absent from her relationship with Joel. Despite the growing rift, Joel still tries to connect with Ellie in his own quiet ways. One of the most poignant examples of this is when he teaches her to play the guitar. This isn't just about learning an instrument, it's a shared activity, a moment of connection that transcends words. Joel, a talented musician in his own right, patiently guides Ellie's fingers, teaching her chords and melodies. The guitar, a relic from the old world, becomes a symbol of their enduring, albeit complicated, bond. It's a way for Joel to impart a piece of himself, a skill that offers comfort and expression in a world often devoid of both. Along with the guitar lessons, Joel also gives Ellie a watch, a simple yet meaningful gift. This watch, likely an old family heirloom or something he salvaged, isn't just a timekeeping device. It's a tangible reminder of his love and his desire to protect her, to give her a sense of normalcy and a connection to the past. These gestures, though small, are Joel's attempts to bridge the emotional gap that is open between them, to remind Ellie of the deep affection he still holds for her. In another instance of Ellie seeking connection to the past, she discovers Joel's old cassette tapes. These tapes contain music from before the Outbreak, a collection of classic rock and country songs that Joel listened to in his youth. For Ellie, these tapes are a window into a world she never knew, a world of normalcy and innocence that existed before the cordyceps. She listens to them intently, immersing herself in the sounds and lyrics, trying to understand the man who raised her and the world that shaped him. The music becomes a form of escapism, a way to momentarily forget the harsh realities of their present and the unresolved tensions with Joel. It's a private ritual, a quiet exploration of Joel's past that offers her a different perspective on him, perhaps even a glimmer of understanding for the choices he made. These tapes, like the guitar, are a subtle thread connecting them, even as they drift further apart. As Ellie spends more time with her friends, her bond with Dina deepens significantly. They become inseparable, often going on patrols together, venturing outside the settlement walls to scout for resources or clear out infected. These patrols, while dangerous, are also opportunities for them to bond, to rely on each other, and to share intimate moments away from the watchful eyes of the community. They develop a rhythm, a silent understanding that comes from facing danger together. They share stories, secrets, and dreams, their conversations ranging from the mundane to the deeply personal. Dina, with her open and accepting nature, provides Ellie with a safe space to express her feelings, something she struggles to do with Joel. Their friendship eventually evolves into something more profound, hinting at a deeper, romantic connection. These intimate moments are subtle at first, a lingering touch, a shared glance, a closeness that transcends mere friendship. They support each other, comfort each other, and find solace in each other's presence. These moments are crucial for Ellie, offering her a sense of being truly seen and understood, a feeling that has become increasingly rare in her relationship with Joel. The budding romance between Ellie and Dina represents a new chapter in Ellie's life, a chance for her to forge her own path and find love and acceptance on her own terms, even as the shadow of Joel's lie continues to loom large. This developing relationship is a testament to Ellie's resilience and her capacity for love, even in a world that has taken so much from her. It also sets the stage for future conflicts and challenges as the complexities of love, loyalty, and loss continue to weave through her story. Their relationship, once a whispered secret, gradually became an open fact within the tightly knit Jackson community. While some residents, particularly older ones who remember the pre-outbreak world's more conservative norms, might have raised an eyebrow, the overwhelming sentiment was one of acceptance, even quiet celebration. In a world where every day was a struggle for survival, where loss was a constant companion, love in any form was cherished, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. Maria, as the de facto leader, set an example of pragmatic tolerance, understanding that strong bonds, regardless of their nature, were vital for the settlement's cohesion. Tommy, ever the protective uncle figure, watched over Ellie and Dina with a paternal gaze, offering subtle encouragement and ensuring they felt secure in their burgeoning affection. This acceptance cemented Dina's place not just as Ellie's partner, but as an integral member of the Jackson family, her skills and spirit valued by all. Despite this blossoming romance, Ellie's responsibilities within Jackson did not wane. She continued to undertake patrols, a crucial duty for any able-bodied resident, especially one with her unparalleled combat prowess. These patrols, designed to secure the settlement's perimeter, gather resources, and monitor for threats, often saw her accompanied by either Dina or Jesse. When Dina joined her, their shared experiences in the wilderness, the quiet moments spent tracking game or observing the desolate beauty of the post-apocalyptic landscape, deepened their connection. They learned to anticipate each other's movements in a fight, a silent language developing between them that transcended words. Jesse, a longtime friend and trusted ally, also frequently partnered with Ellie. His easygoing nature and sharp wit provided a welcome counterpoint to Ellie's often brooding intensity. Their patrols together were marked by comfortable camaraderie, the kind forged in shared dangers and mutual respect. Jesse, ever observant, witnessed the subtle shifts in Ellie's demeanor when Dina was around, a lightness in her step, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, and he offered his silent approval, a testament to his loyalty and care for both of them. These patrols, whether with Dina or Jesse, served a dual purpose. They kept Jackson safe and provided Ellie with a sense of purpose, a way to channel her restless energy and formidable skills. During this period, Joel, ever the persistent, if sometimes clumsy father figure, made concerted efforts to bridge the chasm that had opened between him and Ellie. He understood, perhaps more acutely than anyone, the depth of her trauma and the burden of his lie. He knew he couldn't undo the past, but he desperately wanted to mend their fractured relationship. His primary vehicle for this attempted reconciliation was music. Joel knew of Ellie's nascent interest in the guitar, a spark he had ignited years ago, and he saw it as a common ground, a shared passion they could explore together. He would often approach her, guitar in hand, offering to teach her new chords, show her finger-picking techniques, or simply play a tune for her. These gestures were heartfelt, born of a genuine desire to connect, to share something beautiful and peaceful in a world so often devoid of both. He would recount anecdotes from his own youth, stories of playing with his brother, Tommy, trying to evoke a sense of shared history, of family. He hoped that through the universal language of music, the barriers between them might slowly begin to crumble. However, Ellie, still reeling from the revelation of his deception at the Firefly Hospital, maintained a polite, distinctly distant demeanor towards Joel. While she didn't outright reject his overtures, she kept him at arm's length, a protective barrier around her heart. She would listen to his lessons, sometimes even play a few chords under his guidance, but her responses were often monosyllabic, her gaze averted. There was a quiet intensity behind her politeness, a simmering resentment that she kept carefully contained. She accepted his guitar lessons not out of a desire for reconciliation, but perhaps out of a lingering sense of obligation, or perhaps because she genuinely enjoyed the music, even if the teacher was the source of so much pain. She recognized the effort he was making, the genuine desire in his eyes, but the wound was still too fresh, too deep to allow for easy forgiveness. Her interactions with him were cordial, never openly hostile, but they lacked the warmth, the easy affection that had once defined their bond. She was careful not to give him false hope, to signal that things were back to the way they were, because they weren't, and she wasn't sure they ever could be. This emotional distance was a defense mechanism, a way for her to protect herself from further hurt, to process the immense betrayal she felt. Amidst this personal turmoil, Ellie and Dina found solace and strength in each other. They often discussed their future together, not in grand, sweeping declarations, but in quiet, intimate conversations during their downtime in Jackson. They spoke of building a life within the settlement, of contributing to its growth, of finding a sense of permanence in a world that offered so little of it. They talked about simple things, sharing a small home, perhaps even raising a family someday, though that thought was still distant and abstract. They envisioned a life where they could be safe, together, free from the constant threat of infected or hostile human factions. These conversations were essential for both of them, grounding their relationship in shared aspirations and mutual commitment. They represented a radical act of hope in a bleak reality, a belief that a future worth living was not only possible but within their grasp, as long as they had each other. Dina, ever the optimist, brought a lightness to these discussions, while Ellie, ever the pragmatist, considered the logistics, the challenges, but always with Dina's hand in hers, a silent affirmation of their shared path. Their patrols continued, taking them further afield from the immediate vicinity of Jackson into the surrounding wilderness. These excursions were vital for scouting new resource locations, monitoring the movements of infected hordes, and ensuring the safety of the settlement's extended territory. During these patrols, Ellie and Dina frequently encountered infected. These weren't always massive hordes, sometimes just a lone clicker lurking in the shadows of a dilapidated building, or a small group of shamblers shambling through an overgrown forest. Each encounter, however, was a test of their skills, a reminder of the ever-present danger. They faced runners, the freshly turned infected who retained some of their human speed and ferocity, often attacking in unpredictable bursts. They contended with stalkers, the more cunning and patient infected, who would hide in dark corners waiting for the opportune moment to strike, their guttural growls a chilling warning. And, of course, they battled clickers, the blind, echolocating horrors whose ceramic-like fungal plates made them incredibly resilient to frontal attacks, requiring stealth or precise, powerful blows. Through these repeated confrontations, Ellie and Dina honed their combat skills, developing a seamless synergy. Dina, with her quick reflexes and proficiency with a switchblade and bow, complemented Ellie's aggressive, often brutal, fighting style. Ellie, with her immunity and extensive experience, acted as the spearhead, drawing infected attention, while Dina provided crucial backup, flanking enemies and taking out stragglers. They learned to communicate non-verbally, a glance, a subtle hand gesture, conveying entire strategies in the heat of battle. They mastered the art of stealth, navigating infected areas with silent precision, using environmental cues to their advantage. They became adept at crafting improvised weapons and tools, turning scavenged materials into life-saving devices. Each successful encounter, each narrowly avoided catastrophe, forged their partnership into something unbreakable, a testament to their individual strengths and their combined resilience. They learned to rely implicitly on each other, their lives often hanging in the balance, reinforcing the profound trust and love that bound them together. These patrols were not just about survival. They were about growth, about becoming formidable warriors, and about solidifying their bond against the backdrop of a broken world. After days, sometimes weeks, spent navigating the treacherous wilderness, facing down infected and scavenging for supplies, Ellie and Dina would eventually return to Jackson. Their returns were always met with a quiet sense of relief and celebration from the community. They would typically bring back valuable resources, perhaps a cache of canned goods, some much-needed medical supplies, or even a few working tools. More importantly, they brought back vital intelligence about the surrounding areas, reporting on infected movements, potential threats, and safe routes. Their success on these patrols was a constant reassurance to the residents of Jackson, a tangible demonstration of the settlement's continued security and the competence of its defenders. Upon their return, they would share their findings with Maria and Tommy, debriefing them on their journey, highlighting any significant observations or encounters. These debriefings were serious affairs, but once concluded, Ellie and Dina would finally have a chance to relax, to shed the weight of the wilderness, and to simply be together, safe within the walls of Jackson, if only for a little while. They would often seek out a quiet corner, perhaps by the warmth of a fire, and recount their adventures, the dangers faced, the small victories won, solidifying their shared history and deepening their connection. Their return to Jackson was always a reminder of what they were fighting for, the community, the safety, and the future they were building together. The quiet, if somewhat strained, normalcy of Jackson's settlement life, which we explored in our previous segment, is shattered in the year 2038. This pivotal moment marks the true beginning of the events of The Last of Us, Part 2, a story steeped in the brutal, cyclical nature of revenge. Our timeline now shifts dramatically to a series of events that will irrevocably alter the lives of our protagonists, beginning with a seemingly innocuous encounter that quickly devolves into unspeakable tragedy. The catalyst for this new chapter of violence unfolds during a routine patrol outside the safe confines of Jackson. Joel Miller, now a seasoned survivor and a surrogate father figure to Ellie, is out with his brother, Tommy. The weather is unforgiving, a harsh Wyoming blizzard blanketing the landscape in a thick, disorienting white. Visibility is poor, and the biting cold makes every movement a struggle. It's under these treacherous conditions that they stumble upon a small group of strangers, themselves caught in the throes of the blizzard and fending off a horde of infected. Among these strangers is a formidable woman named Abby Anderson, a character whose past is inextricably linked to Joel's own, though neither he nor Tommy are aware of it at this moment. The immediate threat of the infected, those fungal-ridden creatures that plague this post-apocalyptic world, forces an uneasy alliance. Joel, ever the pragmatist, and Tommy, with his strong moral compass, assist Abby and her companions in dispatching the immediate danger. Given the severity of the storm and the shared peril, the group, now numbering several individuals, decides to seek shelter. They locate an abandoned, sprawling mansion, a relic of the pre-outbreak world, offering a temporary reprieve from the elements and the ever-present threat of the infected. Inside, a fragile sense of security settles over them, but it is a peace destined to be short-lived. As the storm rages outside, trapping them together, the tension within the mansion slowly mounts. Abby, a woman of imposing physical stature and a fierce demeanor, observes Joel with an intensity that belies the casual nature of their encounter. Her companions, equally stoic and watchful, seem to share in her unspoken agenda. The conversations are guarded, introductions brief, as is often the case in this dangerous world where trust is a luxury few can afford. However, Abby is not seeking camaraderie, she is seeking something far more absolute. The moment arrives when the storm shows no signs of abating and the group is settled, believing themselves safe. Abby, with a chilling calmness, reveals her identity. She is Abby Anderson, and her father was Jerry Anderson, the Firefly surgeon. For those unfamiliar with the deeper lore, Jerry Anderson was the very doctor Joel killed at the end of the first Last of Us game. This act, committed to prevent Ellie from being sacrificed for a potential cure, saved Ellie's life but condemned humanity to its ongoing struggle with the cordyceps infection. It was a choice born of love and desperation, but one that carried immense consequences, consequences that now, years later, have come to violently manifest themselves. Abby explains her connection, her words laced with years of simmering hatred and a singular, unwavering focus on vengeance. The revelation hangs heavy in the air, a death knell for the fleeting peace. Joel, hearing the name, the context, understands immediately the gravity of the situation. He is trapped, cornered, and facing the culmination of a past he had perhaps hoped to leave behind. What follows is an act of shocking brutality that serves as the narrative cornerstone for The Last of Us Part 2. Abby, fueled by an insatiable desire for retribution for her father's death, brutally murders Joel. The scene is agonizingly drawn out, a deliberate act of cruelty designed to inflict maximum suffering, not just on Joel, but on those who witness it. She uses a golf club, delivering repeated, savage blows to Joel's head, an act that is both physically devastating and emotionally gut-wrenching. The horror of the moment is amplified by the fact that Ellie, having tracked Joel and Tommy to the mansion, arrives just in time to witness the final, agonizing moments of Joel's life. She is forced to watch, powerless, as the man who saved her, the man who became her father, is beaten to death before her eyes. Tommy, ever protective of his brother, attempts to intervene, to stop the senseless violence. He lunges forward, desperate to save Joel, but he is swiftly incapacitated. One of Abby's companions, a WLF, Washington Liberation Front, soldier, shoots him in the leg, a precise and debilitating wound that renders him unable to fight or protect Joel. Tommy collapses, bleeding and helpless, forced to bear witness to the same horrific spectacle as Ellie. The murder of Joel is not just a death, it is an execution, a meticulously planned act of revenge that leaves an indelible scar on everyone present, most profoundly on Ellie. The sheer savagery of the act, the cold indifference of Abby and her group, and the utter helplessness of Ellie and Tommy establish the raw, uncompromising tone of the game. The immediate aftermath is a blur of grief, rage, and a profound sense of loss for Ellie. Joel is gone, and the world, already a desolate place, feels infinitely darker. Tommy, though gravely wounded, survives, but the physical and emotional scars of that day will forever mark him. The group responsible, Abby and her WLF companions, depart, leaving behind a scene of devastation and a burning desire for retribution in Ellie's heart. This event is the genesis of Ellie's own journey into the abyss of revenge. Driven by an overwhelming need to avenge Joel's death, Ellie, accompanied by her girlfriend Dina and their mutual friend Jesse, embarks on a perilous journey to Seattle. This decision, born of grief and a profound sense of injustice, sets them on a collision course with Abby and the WLF. The journey itself is fraught with danger, traversing the treacherous, infected-ridden landscapes of the post-outbreak United States. They leave behind the relative safety of Jackson, trading it for the unknown perils of a city known to be a hotbed of factional conflict. Their destination is not just a city, it is the battleground where Ellie intends to exact her revenge. Upon their arrival in Seattle, Ellie and Dina are immediately confronted with the harsh realities of the city. Seattle is not a unified settlement, it is a war zone, divided and scarred by the ongoing conflict between two dominant factions, the Washington Liberation Front, or WLF, and the Seraphites, often referred to as scars by their enemies. The WLF, a highly organized and militaristic group, controls significant portions of the city, operating with a ruthless efficiency. They are former citizens of Seattle who revolted against the military occupation zone, QZ, that was established after the outbreak, successfully overthrowing the military and establishing their own authoritarian rule. Their ideology is rooted in self-sufficiency and a fierce protection of their territory. Opposing them are the Seraphites, a deeply religious and fanatical cult. They follow the teachings of a prophetess, adhering to a strict, almost tribal way of life, eschewing technology and embracing a brutal, ritualistic form of combat. They are known for their distinctive facial scarring and their silent, deadly hunting tactics. The war between these two factions is constant, brutal, and utterly devastating to the city and its remaining inhabitants. Ellie and Dina find themselves caught in the middle of this bloody conflict, a conflict that has no bearing on their personal quest for revenge, yet one they must navigate to reach their target. As they venture deeper into the WLF-controlled areas of Seattle, Ellie and Dina are forced to contend with the dual threats of the infected and the WLF patrols. The city itself is a labyrinth of decaying buildings, overgrown streets, and constant danger. Every corner turned could lead to an ambush by a WLF patrol, or a sudden, terrifying encounter with a clicker, a stalker, or even the more advanced and terrifying shamblers, a new type of infected that expels corrosive spores. They move cautiously, relying on stealth and their combined survival skills, a testament to the harsh lessons learned over years of living in this broken world. The constant threat keeps them on edge, reinforcing the grim reality of their mission. Seeking a moment of respite and a safe place to plan their next move, Ellie and Dina discover an abandoned music store. It's a small, dusty sanctuary amidst the urban decay, filled with instruments and sheet music, relics of a bygone era. Here, in this quiet, almost reverent space, a deeply personal and emotional moment unfolds. Dina, who has been experiencing symptoms of nausea and fatigue, reveals to Ellie that she is pregnant. This revelation is a profound shock, a sudden, unexpected twist that adds an entirely new layer of complexity to their already perilous journey. The news forces Ellie to confront the potential consequences of her actions, not just for herself, but for the life growing inside Dina. It introduces a moral dilemma, a conflict between her burning desire for revenge and the responsibility of protecting a new life. The weight of this revelation is immense, adding a palpable tension to their single-minded pursuit of Abby. Despite the emotional upheaval, their mission remains paramount. Ellie and Dina continue their exploration of downtown Seattle, meticulously searching for any information that might lead them to Abby. They navigate the sprawling, interconnected ruins of the city, each building a potential hiding spot for enemies or a source of vital clues. Their search is methodical, driven by Ellie's unwavering resolve. They scour abandoned buildings, ransack defunct businesses, and examine any scrap of paper or computer terminal that might offer a lead. The city itself becomes a puzzle, each street and alleyway a piece they must solve to uncover Abby's whereabouts. During their extensive search, Ellie makes a significant discovery, a detailed map of Seattle. This isn't just any map, it's a WLF patrol map, annotated with their routes, checkpoints, and key strategic locations. This find is a crucial turning point, providing Ellie with invaluable intelligence. It allows her to understand the WLF's operational patterns, identify their strongholds, and, most importantly, begin to piece together where Abby might be located within the city's vast and dangerous landscape. The map becomes their guide, a blueprint for navigating the treacherous urban environment and for planning their approach. It offers a glimmer of hope in their otherwise desperate search, transforming their aimless wandering into a more targeted pursuit. As they continue to follow the clues and navigate the city, their path leads them through a large, overgrown park. This seemingly natural oasis within the concrete jungle quickly turns into a terrifying gauntlet. They encounter a massive group of infected, a horrifying congregation of various types, including several shamblers. Shamblers, as mentioned earlier, are a particularly dangerous evolution of the infected, characterized by their heavily armored bodies and their ability to emit corrosive spores that burn on contact. The encounter is a brutal test of their combat skills and their ability to work together. They are forced to fight for their lives against overwhelming odds, using every weapon and tactic at their disposal to survive the onslaught. The park becomes a scene of intense, close-quarters combat, a visceral reminder of the constant, unyielding threat posed by the infected. Having survived the harrowing encounter in the park, Ellie and Dina press on, their determination unwavering. Their path forward is blocked by a heavily fortified WLF checkpoint, a formidable barrier designed to control access further into the city. To continue their pursuit of Abby, they have no choice but to infiltrate this stronghold. This requires a combination of stealth, tactical planning, and direct combat. They must navigate the patrols, avoid detection, and neutralize any threats that stand in their way. The checkpoint represents not just a physical obstacle, but a symbolic one, a gateway into the deeper, more dangerous territories controlled by the WLF. Successfully breaching it is essential for Ellie to advance her quest for revenge, bringing her one step closer to Abby, and one step deeper into the heart of the conflict that consumes Seattle. This marks the end of their first day in Seattle, A day filled with profound revelations, brutal encounters, and an unyielding march towards an uncertain and potentially devastating confrontation. As the duo pushes deeper into the WLF-controlled city, the true scale of the conflict becomes disturbingly clear. Every street corner, every abandoned building, every overgrown park seems to hum with the tension of war. Ellie and Dina navigate the treacherous landscape, a constant ballet of stealth and evasion. They encounter not only the ever-present threat of the infected, but also the heavily armed and well-organized patrols of the Washington Liberation Front, or WLF as they are commonly known. These patrols are a stark reminder that even in a world ravaged by a fungal pandemic, humanity's capacity for internal strife remains undiminished. The WLF, a paramilitary group that seized control of Seattle from the oppressive Federal Disaster Response Agency, or FEDRA, years prior, maintains a tight grip on the city, viewing any outsiders with suspicion and hostility. Their presence transforms the urban decay into a battlefield, where every shadow could conceal an enemy, and every sound could betray their position. The infected, too, present a renewed and terrifying challenge. Beyond the familiar clickers and runners, new strains and behaviors have emerged in the years since the initial outbreak. Stalkers, for instance, are now more prevalent, their unnerving silence and propensity for ambush making them particularly dangerous in the close quarters of the city. Their camouflage forms blend seamlessly with the urban decay, waiting patiently in the dark, only to strike with sudden, brutal efficiency. The sheer density of the infected population within Seattle speaks to the WLF's ongoing struggle to completely secure the city, creating a dangerous dynamic where WLF soldiers and infected often clash, inadvertently creating opportunities for Ellie and Dina to slip through the cracks. This constant three-way dance for survival, against the infected, against the WLF, and against the very environment itself, becomes the backdrop for Ellie's relentless pursuit of Abby. Their journey takes them through a series of iconic Seattle landmarks, now twisted and reclaimed by nature and the relentless march of time. They traverse the dilapidated remains of the Seattle Convention Center, a sprawling complex that once hosted grand events, now a labyrinth of collapsed ceilings and flooded lower levels. Here, the echoing sounds of their own footsteps are often punctuated by the distant guttural cries of infected or the sharp metallic clang of WLF patrols. They must employ a combination of stealth and strategic combat, utilizing Ellie's honed skills with a bow and various firearms, as well as Dina's surprisingly effective support with her own pistol and a keen eye for environmental traps. Dina, despite her initial reluctance to be involved in Ellie's quest for vengeance, proves to be an invaluable companion, her practical skills and unwavering loyalty a source of strength for Ellie. As they push further into the city, Ellie begins to uncover fragments of information, disparate pieces of a puzzle that slowly begin to coalesce into a disturbing picture. These clues are not always direct, but rather discovered through environmental storytelling, through the journals and notes left behind by former inhabitants, and through the remnants of past conflicts. One such revelation comes through a series of cryptic graffiti tags and faded posters, hinting at the presence of the Fireflies within Seattle, a faction Ellie believed to be largely defunct after the events at the Salt Lake City Hospital. The Fireflies, for those unfamiliar, were a revolutionary militia group that aimed to overthrow FEDRA and find a cure for the cordyceps infection. Their ultimate goal was noble, but their methods were often extreme, and their numbers dwindled significantly after their defeat in Boston and the subsequent events in Salt Lake City. The discovery of Firefly remnants in Seattle is a significant development, raising questions about their continued activities and their potential connection to Abby. This initial hint, however, is merely a precursor to a far more impactful revelation. Ellie's investigation leads her to a specific location, a former Firefly medical outpost, now abandoned and overgrown. Within this decaying facility, amid scattered medical supplies and forgotten equipment, she uncovers a series of documents and recordings. These artifacts, preserved despite the passage of time and the chaos of the outbreak, paint a vivid and unsettling picture of Abby's past. It is here that Ellie learns with a sickening jolt of Abby's profound connection to the Fireflies. The documents reveal that Abby's father was a prominent surgeon within the Firefly organization, a brilliant and dedicated doctor who was actively working on a potential cure for the cordyceps infection. The weight of this information hits Ellie with the force of a physical blow. The Fireflies, the very group that Joel had decimated in Salt Lake City to save Ellie's life, were Abby's family. Her father, the surgeon Joel murdered, was not just some nameless doctor. He was a man dedicated to saving humanity, a man whose life was cut short by Joel's desperate act. The implications are immediate and devastating for Ellie. The righteous anger that has fueled her journey begins to falter, replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. She had always viewed Joel's actions in Salt Lake City as a necessary evil, a painful but ultimately justified decision to save her. Now, she sees it through Abby's eyes. A brutal, senseless act of murder that tore a family apart and extinguished the last hope for humanity. The moral ambiguity of Joel's choice, a burden she has carried subconsciously for years, now erupts into the forefront of her consciousness. The clarity of her purpose, once so absolute, becomes clouded by doubt and a growing sense of guilt. The documents further detail the Fireflies' desperate attempts to synthesize a cure, their dwindling resources, and their eventual relocation to Seattle in a last-ditch effort to continue their research. Abby's father, the surgeon, was a central figure in these efforts, his passion and dedication evident in his detailed notes and personal logs. These logs also reveal the profound impact of the Firefly's collapse on Abby, illustrating her unwavering loyalty to her father and her deep-seated belief in their cause. She was present during their final, chaotic days, witnessing firsthand the destruction of their dreams and the loss of her father. This information provides a chillingly clear motive for Abby's actions in Jackson, transforming her from a faceless antagonist into a grieving daughter seeking retribution. Ellie also uncovers details about Joel's past actions, specifically his violent confrontation with the Fireflies at the Salt Lake City Hospital. The Firefly documents, while not entirely unbiased, describe Joel as a ruthless and unyielding force, a man who slaughtered their personnel without hesitation, all to prevent them from operating on Ellie. The narrative painted by these documents is one of a desperate group on the cusp of a potential breakthrough, only to be brutally stopped by a single, determined individual. This perspective directly contradicts the simplified, almost heroic version of events that Ellie had held onto for so long. She begins to see Joel's actions not just as an act of love, but as an act of profound selfishness, one that had devastating consequences for countless others. The weight of this revelation is immense. It forces Ellie to confront the uncomfortable truth that her beloved surrogate father, the man who saved her life, was also responsible for immense suffering and the potential destruction of humanity's last hope. The lines between hero and villain, victim and aggressor, blur into an agonizing gray. This newfound understanding of Abby's motivations does not immediately negate Ellie's desire for vengeance, but it certainly complicates it. The simple narrative of good versus evil, which had previously propelled her forward, shatters into 1,000 complex pieces. Dina, witnessing Ellie's distress and the profound impact of these discoveries, offers what comfort she can. She listens patiently as Ellie grapples with the implications, her presence a steady anchor in Ellie's increasingly turbulent emotional landscape. Dina's perspective, while sympathetic to Ellie's pain, also provides a subtle counterpoint. She reminds Ellie of the present danger, of their immediate goals, and of the need to remain focused. However, even Dina cannot fully alleviate the burden of this new knowledge. The discovery of Abby's connection to the Fireflies and the detailed account of Joel's past actions fundamentally reshapes Ellie's understanding of her mission. What began as a clear-cut quest for revenge now transforms into a far more morally complex and emotionally taxing journey. The city of Seattle, already a crucible of danger and despair, now becomes a stage for a profound internal conflict within Ellie. Her initial certainty gives way to doubt, her unwavering resolve to a gnawing sense of guilt. The path forward, once so clear, is now shrouded in a haze of moral ambiguity, forcing Ellie to question not only Abby's motives, but her own. This pivotal moment marks a significant turning point in Ellie's character arc, setting the stage for the difficult choices and profound consequences that lie ahead. The pursuit of Abby is no longer a simple act of retribution. It has become a desperate search for understanding, for justice, and perhaps for some semblance of peace in a world utterly devoid of it. Having established the grim trajectory of Ellie's revenge quest across Seattle's ravaged landscape, we now advance our timeline to the pivotal days of 2038, specifically Seattle Day 2 and 3. This period marks a significant escalation in the conflict, pushing Ellie and her companions to their moral and physical limits, while simultaneously laying the groundwork for a profound shift in narrative perspective. As Day 2 dawns, Ellie's singular focus remains on locating Abby, the woman who brutally murdered Joel. This relentless pursuit, fueled by grief and an insatiable desire for retribution, propels her deeper into the perilous heart of Seattle, a city fractured by warring factions. The danger Ellie faces is no longer merely from the infected, though they remain a constant, lurking threat. Instead, her primary adversaries are the human factions, particularly the Washington Liberation Front, or WLF, often referred to as the Wolves by outsiders. This highly organized and militaristic group controls vast swathes of Seattle, enforcing their rule with an iron fist. Their conflict with the Seraphites, or Scars, a religious cult characterized by their distinctive facial scarification and use of bows and arrows, has turned the city into a brutal battleground. Ellie, an outsider, finds herself caught between these warring factions, her presence an unwelcome intrusion that draws the attention of both. Each step she takes, each WLF patrol she evades or eliminates, each Seraphite ambush she survives, only tightens the net around her, making her quest increasingly perilous. The stakes are higher, the encounters more frequent, and the consequences more severe. Her pursuit eventually leads her, along with Jesse, who has arrived from Jackson to offer support, and Tommy, Joel's brother, to a critical location, the WLF Stadium. This massive structure serves as the primary base of operations for the WLF, a heavily fortified stronghold teeming with soldiers, resources, and, Ellie believes, Abby herself. The stadium represents a significant obstacle, a seemingly impenetrable fortress that underscores the sheer power and organization of the WLF. Infiltrating such a high-value target is a testament to Ellie's unwavering determination, but it also highlights the increasing recklessness of her actions. The trio, driven by their shared objective, meticulously plans their approach, navigating the fortified perimeter, avoiding patrols, and utilizing their combined skills to gain entry. The very act of reaching the stadium is a significant achievement, a testament to their resilience and resourcefulness in the face of overwhelming odds. However, their intelligence, while leading them to the WLF's heartland, proves to be slightly off. Abby is not at the stadium, but their presence there provides a crucial piece of information, a lead to Nora Harris. Nora Harris, a WLF medic, is identified as a potential source of information regarding Abby's whereabouts. Ellie and Jesse, now operating with a more specific target, track Nora to a hospital, another WLF-controlled facility. This hospital, like the stadium, is heavily guarded, requiring another stealthy infiltration. The atmosphere within the hospital is tense, a stark contrast to the open-air combat of the city streets. Here, the danger is more claustrophobic, the encounters more intimate. Ellie and Jesse move through the sterile, blood-stained corridors, their senses heightened, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. The hospital, a place traditionally associated with healing and care, becomes another arena for violence and desperation. Their infiltration is successful, and they manage to corner Nora Harris, a woman who, while a member of the WLF, is primarily a medical professional. The confrontation with Nora marks a turning point for Ellie, a descent into a darker, more morally ambiguous territory. Ellie, desperate for information, resorts to torture. The scene is brutal and unflinching, depicting Ellie's relentless interrogation of Nora. Ellie, fueled by her grief and anger, pushes Nora for details about Abby's location, employing increasingly aggressive tactics. Nora, initially defiant, eventually succumbs to the pain, revealing that Abby is at the aquarium. The act of torture itself is deeply disturbing, showcasing the destructive power of revenge and the lengths to which Ellie is willing to go. It is a stark departure from the Ellie we knew, the compassionate, empathetic young woman who valued human life. This act, while yielding the desired information, comes at a significant moral cost. Following the brutal interrogation, Ellie, in a state of heightened emotional distress, kills Nora. This act, the cold-blooded murder of an unarmed medic, is a profound and disturbing moment. It is a moment where Ellie crosses a line, a point of no return in her quest for vengeance. The act itself is quick, decisive, and horrifying. The immediate aftermath sees Ellie visibly traumatized by her actions. The weight of what she has done, the realization of the monster she is becoming, begins to settle upon her. This is not the clean, justifiable killing of an enemy combatant in self-defense. This is an execution, a brutal act born of rage and desperation. The impact of Nora's death on Ellie is immediate and profound. She is visibly shaken, her hands trembling, her face etched with a mixture of horror and self-loathing. This moment is crucial in understanding Ellie's psychological state and the internal conflict that will plague her throughout the remainder of her journey. The trauma of killing Nora is a wound that will not easily heal, a scar on her conscience that will continue to fester. While Ellie and Jesse are engaged in their brutal interrogation, Tommy, driven by his own grief and a more direct, less nuanced approach to revenge, is operating independently. His actions, though seemingly effective in the short term, have far-reaching consequences. Tommy, a skilled marksman and veteran of the apocalypse, ambushes WLF patrols, systematically eliminating them with surgical precision. His tactics are designed to draw attention, to create a diversion, and to sow chaos within the WLF ranks, all in an effort to aid Ellie's mission. However, his aggressive, solitary actions also make him a conspicuous target. He becomes a phantom, a whisper of death, but also a beacon that the WLF cannot ignore. His relentless attacks, while inflicting casualties on the WLF, also serve to escalate the conflict, drawing the full might of the WLF's resources to track and eliminate this unseen threat. This ultimately puts him in a dangerous position, making him a prime target for Abby and her group. The culmination of these converging storylines, Ellie's relentless pursuit, Tommy's aggressive tactics, and Abby's own movements, leads to a devastating confrontation at the theater. This location, a temporary refuge for Ellie and Dina, becomes the site of a brutal ambush. Jesse, ever loyal and protective, is tragically killed by Abby during this confrontation. His death is sudden and shocking, a stark reminder of the brutal realities of their world and the unforgiving nature of Abby's vengeance. Jesse, who had traveled all the way from Jackson to support Ellie, a beacon of hope and pragmatism, is cut down in his prime, a casualty of a war that was not his own. His death is a significant blow to Ellie, a loss that compounds her already overwhelming grief and trauma. In the same brutal confrontation, Tommy is severely injured by Abby. His aggressive tactics and his determination to protect Ellie ultimately lead to his downfall. Abby, a formidable combatant, disarms and incapacitates him, leaving him gravely wounded. Tommy's injuries are severe, a testament to Abby's strength and ruthlessness. This leaves Ellie and Dina vulnerable, their protectors incapacitated or dead, facing Abby alone. The theater, once a place of temporary respite, transforms into a scene of carnage, a testament to the escalating violence and the devastating consequences of their intertwined fates. Abby, having eliminated Jesse and severely wounded Tommy, confronts Ellie and Dina at the theater. This is the moment of truth, the highly anticipated clash between the two protagonists. The ensuing fight is brutal and visceral, a desperate struggle for survival. Ellie, despite her injuries and emotional exhaustion, fights with a ferocity born of desperation and grief. Dina, though pregnant, also attempts to defend herself and Ellie. The fight is a raw display of their respective strengths and weaknesses, a testament to their training and their will to survive. It is a struggle that pushes both Ellie and Abby to their physical and emotional limits, each determined to emerge victorious. In a surprising turn of events, Abby, despite her overwhelming rage and her desire for revenge against Ellie, spares Dina. This act of mercy is prompted by Ellie's desperate plea, a moment of vulnerability that cuts through Abby's hardened exterior. Ellie, recognizing Dina's pregnancy, appeals to Abby's humanity, a humanity that despite everything still exists within her. This decision by Abby is a pivotal moment, a crack in the facade of her single-minded vengeance. It suggests that there is more to Abby than just a killer, that she is capable of empathy and compassion, even in the midst of such brutal conflict. This act of sparing Dina, a pregnant woman, is a stark contrast to the brutal events that preceded it, hinting at a complexity within Abby's character that the player has yet to fully understand. It is at this critical juncture, following the devastating confrontation at the theater, that the narrative undergoes a profound and deliberate shift. The story transitions from Ellie's perspective to Abby's, offering players an entirely new lens through which to view the unfolding events. This shift is not merely a change in playable character, it is a fundamental reorientation of the entire narrative, designed to challenge player assumptions and to foster a deeper understanding of the motivations driving both protagonists. Up until this point, Abby has been presented as the antagonist, the embodiment of evil, the killer of Joel. Now, the game invites the player to step into her shoes, to experience her life, her struggles, and her own deeply personal quest for justice. This narrative choice is audacious and, for many players, initially disorienting. It forces a reevaluation of everything that has transpired, compelling the player to confront the complexities of revenge and the cyclical nature of violence. Through Abby's perspective, the game meticulously unravels her motivations and her past, revealing a backstory that is as tragic and compelling as Ellie's. The player learns that Abby's relentless pursuit of Joel was driven by a profound personal loss. Joel's actions at the St. Mary's Hospital in Salt Lake City, where he massacred the Fireflies and prevented the creation of a vaccine, directly led to the death of her father, Jerry Anderson. Jerry was the lead surgeon, the very doctor who was about to operate on Ellie to extract the fungal growth that could have led to a cure. Abby witnessed her father's brutal murder at Joel's hands, a traumatic event that scarred her deeply and ignited an unquenchable thirst for retribution. This revelation recontextualizes Joel's actions, presenting them not as a heroic act of love, but as a selfish act with devastating consequences for others. Abby's quest for revenge, therefore, mirrors Ellie's, creating a powerful parallel between their journeys. Both are driven by the loss of a father figure, both are consumed by grief and a desire for retribution. This narrative technique forces the player to empathize with Abby, to understand the profound pain that fuels her actions, even as those actions have caused immense suffering to Ellie. Furthermore, Abby's narrative delves into the intricate dynamics of her group, the Washington Liberation Front, or WLF. The player gains an insider's view of their daily lives, their military structure, and their ongoing brutal war with the Seraphites, or Scars. The WLF, initially presented as a monolithic, villainous organization from Ellie's perspective, is now revealed to be a complex society with its own internal struggles, loyalties, and ethical dilemmas. The player witnesses the camaraderie among Abby's friends, her complicated relationships, and the moral compromises they are forced to make in a world defined by scarcity and violence. The war between the WLF and the Seraphites is a central theme in Abby's story. The Seraphites, a religious cult that emerged after the Outbreak, are characterized by their distinctive facial scarification, their reliance on bows and arrows, and their fundamentalist ideology. Their conflict with the WLF is a brutal, no-holds-barred struggle for control of Seattle, a conflict that has ravaged the city and inflicted immense suffering on both sides. Through Abby's eyes, the player experiences the visceral reality of this war, the constant threat of ambush, the brutal skirmishes, and the psychological toll it takes on the combatants. This immersion into Abby's world serves to humanize her, to reveal the multifaceted nature of her existence, and to challenge the simplistic notions of good and evil that often dominate revenge narratives. The player is forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that in this world, there are no clear heroes or villains, only survivors, each driven by their own pain, their own loyalties, and their own desperate struggle for existence. This shift in perspective is not merely a plot device, it is a philosophical statement, an invitation to consider the profound implications of empathy and the destructive power of unchecked vengeance. And with this profound narrative shift, we conclude Part 1 of Seattle Day 2 and 3, Poised to delve even deeper into Abby's journey and the further unraveling of the complex tapestry of The Last of Us Part 2, the weight of her past, a burden she had carried for years, began to shift. Abby's flashbacks, fragmented at first, then coalescing into stark clarity, revealed the truth of her father's identity. He was Jerry Anderson, the very surgeon Joel had killed at St. Mary's Hospital in Salt Lake City, the man who had been poised to dissect Ellie in a desperate attempt to create a vaccine. This revelation, though long suspected by those who knew her, cemented the deep-seated motivation behind Abby's relentless hunt for Joel, a quest for revenge that had consumed her for years, shaping her entire existence within the Washington Liberation Front, or WLF. Every training exercise, every mission, every act of violence had been, in some way, a preparation for this moment of retribution. The emotional toll of this pursuit, however, was immense, leaving her hardened yet hollow, a warrior without a true cause beyond vengeance. It was amidst this internal turmoil that a new, unexpected chapter began to unfold for Abby. While on a patrol, she encountered two runaway Seraphite children, Lev and Yara. The Seraphites, often referred to as scars by the WLF due to the ritualistic scarring on their faces, were a deeply religious and insular community, known for their brutal enforcement of strict doctrines and their fierce opposition to outsiders. Lev and Yara, having defied their community's rigid traditions, found themselves in grave danger, hunted by their own people. Abby, despite her hardened exterior and the WLF's ingrained animosity towards the Seraphites, found herself compelled to protect them. This decision marked a significant turning point, a subtle but profound shift in her moral compass, as she began to prioritize the lives of these two children over her ingrained prejudices and the WLF's ongoing war with the Seraphites. Her initial motivation was pragmatic, a debt owed to Owen for a past rescue, but it quickly evolved into genuine concern. The journey to safety for Lev and Yara was fraught with peril. Abby, accompanied by the two siblings, had to navigate treacherous Seraphite territory, a landscape of dense forests and dilapidated urban ruins, all under the constant threat of ambush by the fanatical cultists. Their immediate objective was to reach the hospital, a WLF stronghold, where Yara, who had sustained a severe arm injury, could receive critical medical attention. This perilous trek forced Abby to confront the brutal realities of the Seraphite way of life, witnessing firsthand the relentless persecution of those who dared to deviate from their strict dogma. The experience also forged an unlikely bond between Abby and Lev, a quiet, observant boy who possessed an uncanny understanding of the Seraphites' tactics and beliefs, having once been one of them. He became her guide, her interpreter, and, in many ways, her conscience, challenging her preconceptions and forcing her to see beyond the WLF's black and white view of the world. During their desperate journey, Yara was tragically recaptured by the Seraphites. Abby, driven by a newfound sense of responsibility, refused to abandon her. She launched a daring rescue mission, infiltrating a Seraphite outpost and fighting her way through hordes of cultists to free Yara. The escape was brutal, highlighting the Seraphites' unwavering fanaticism and their willingness to sacrifice themselves for their beliefs. With Yara safely retrieved, Abby raced against time to get her to the hospital. The WLF medical facilities, while rudimentary compared to pre-outbreak standards, were the only hope for Yara's severely injured arm, which was now showing signs of infection. The urgency of the situation underscored the fragility of life in this post-apocalyptic world, where a simple injury could quickly turn fatal without proper care. This act of selfless heroism, risking her own life for two children from an enemy faction, stood in a stark contrast to her earlier singular focus on revenge, demonstrating a profound evolution in her character. It was during her time at the WLF hospital, while waiting for news of Yara's surgery, that Abby learned about a new and terrifying threat emerging from the south: the Rattlers. These were not mere scavengers or opportunistic bandits, but a highly organized and ruthless group operating out of Santa Barbara, California. The Rattlers were known for their brutal methods, enslaving survivors and using them for forced labor, often branding them with their distinctive mark. Their reputation preceded them, painting a grim picture of a new kind of tyranny in a world already ravaged by disease and conflict. The news of the Rattlers introduced a new layer of complexity to the already volatile landscape, hinting at a larger, more existential threat beyond the immediate WLF Seraphite war. This information, though seemingly peripheral at the time, would later play a crucial role in Abby and Lev's future. With Yara recovering, Abby and Lev returned to the WLF Stadium, their primary base of operations. However, they arrived to a scene of utter chaos and devastation. The stadium, once a bustling hub of WLF activity, was under a full-scale assault by the Seraphites. The war between the two factions had escalated dramatically, turning the once secure stronghold into a brutal battlefield. The air was thick with smoke, the sounds of gunfire and explosions echoing through the massive structure. It was a desperate, bloody struggle for survival, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Abby, a seasoned warrior, immediately plunged into the fray, fighting alongside her former comrades, trying to repel the relentless Seraphite attack. The intensity of the battle underscored the deep-seated hatred and animosity that fueled the conflict, a cycle of violence that seemed destined to consume everyone caught within its grip. Amidst the carnage, Abby made a horrifying discovery. she found the bodies of Owen and Mel, two of her closest friends and former Firefly comrades, brutally murdered. The sight of their lifeless forms, particularly Mel, who had been pregnant, ignited a fresh wave of grief and rage within her. The immediate assumption was that the Seraphites were responsible, but as Abby examined the scene more closely, she found evidence that pointed to a different, more chilling truth. The nature of their wounds, the specific types of weapons used, and subtle clues left behind all indicated that the killers were not Seraphites. The realization dawned on her, a cold, hard certainty. Ellie was responsible. The very person she had spared, the one who had taken Joel from her, had now taken Owen and Mel. This discovery reignited the embers of her revenge, transforming it from a satisfied closure into a burning inferno of renewed vengeance. Driven by this renewed fury, Abby frantically searched the stadium for any clue that would lead her to Ellie. Her search led her to a map, meticulously marked with various locations, including a prominent X over the Jackson Theater. The theater, a known WLF outpost, was now clearly indicated as Ellie's hideout. The map was a direct, undeniable lead, a beacon guiding her to her enemy. With this information in hand, Abby's focus narrowed, her objective singular: find Ellie and make her pay. The emotional weight of losing Owen and Mel, coupled with the knowledge that Ellie was responsible, propelled her forward with a desperate, almost reckless determination. Lev, sensing her renewed resolve and the danger it entailed, remained by her side, a silent, steadfast companion. Abby, accompanied by Lev, stormed the theater, confronting Ellie in a brutal, visceral showdown. The ensuing fight was chaotic and devastating. Jesse, a member of Ellie's group, was tragically killed in the crossfire, a casualty of the escalating cycle of violence. Tommy, Joel's brother, also sustained severe injuries, leaving him permanently debilitated. The theater, once a place of entertainment, was transformed into a bloody arena, a testament to the destructive power of revenge. Abby, fueled by grief and rage, fought with a ferocity born of desperation, her every move aimed at incapacitating Ellie. The fight was a brutal display of their respective strengths and weaknesses, a raw, unvarnished portrayal of their shared trauma and their opposing motivations. However, in a moment of profound internal conflict, Abby chose to spare Ellie and Dina, Ellie's pregnant girlfriend. As she held Ellie's knife to Dina's throat, the image of Mel, pregnant and murdered, flashed before her eyes. This stark parallel, the potential for another innocent life to be lost, forced her to confront the very nature of her revenge. The cycle of violence, she realized, was endless, consuming everyone in its path. Killing Ellie and Dina would not bring back Owen or Mel, nor would it erase the pain of Joel's death. Instead, it would only perpetuate the suffering, creating new victims and new avengers. This decision, a moment of unexpected mercy, marked a crucial turning point in Abby's journey, a step back from the brink of utter self-destruction. It was a testament to the subtle influence of Lev, whose unwavering moral compass had slowly but surely chipped away at Abby's hardened exterior, reminding her of the value of life beyond vengeance. With the immediate threat seemingly neutralized, Abby and Lev left Seattle, a city scarred by war and personal tragedy. Their destination, Santa Barbara, California. The news of the Rattlers, once a distant threat, now loomed larger. Abby, having chosen a path away from endless revenge, was now seeking a new purpose, a new community, perhaps even a new home. She hoped to find the remaining Fireflies, the revolutionary group that had once sought a cure for the cordyceps infection, believing that they might still be active in Santa Barbara. This journey represented a desperate search for redemption, a hope for a future free from the ghosts of the past. Lev, her steadfast companion, remained by her side, a beacon of innocence and hope in a world consumed by darkness. Their departure from Seattle marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, a journey towards an uncertain future, but one where the possibility of peace, however fragile, still existed. The year is 2039, roughly a year and a half after the harrowing events in Seattle, and the world continues its slow, agonizing decay. We find ourselves in the aftermath, a period that, for many, promised a semblance of peace, but for some, only deepened the scars. Ellie, having finally settled down with Dina and their infant son, JJ, on a quiet farm in Jackson County, Wyoming, attempts to carve out a new life, a life away from the constant threat of the infected and the brutal realities of human conflict. The idyllic setting, however, proves to be a thin veneer over a deeply fractured psyche. Despite the presence of her new family and the relative safety of the farm, Ellie is relentlessly haunted by the specter of Joel's death. The trauma of witnessing his brutal murder, the helplessness she felt, and the subsequent cycle of revenge and loss have taken a profound toll. Her days are punctuated by vivid, intrusive flashbacks of that horrific morning in Jackson. She sees Joel's beaten face, hears his choked cries, feels the cold steel of the golf club as Abby delivers the fatal blows. These involuntary memories are not fleeting images. They are searing, immersive experiences that drag her back to that moment, stripping away her present reality. During these episodes, Ellie often lashes out, her carefully constructed composure shattering. She might drop whatever she is holding, her hands trembling, or snap at Dina. her voice laced with an unfamiliar harshness. The farm, meant to be a sanctuary, frequently becomes a stage for her internal torment. She might be tending to the chickens, her mind suddenly transported to the moment she found Joel, causing her to freeze, her breath catching in her throat. Or, while rocking JJ to sleep, a flicker of memory, a sound, a scent, can trigger a full-blown flashback, leaving her disoriented and agitated. Dina, ever the patient and understanding partner, attempts to comfort Ellie during these harrowing moments. She recognizes the signs, the sudden withdrawal, the distant gaze, the rapid breathing. She would gently approach Ellie, offering a comforting touch, a soft word, or a simple embrace. "It's okay, Elle," she might whisper, trying to ground Ellie in the present. However, Ellie's trauma has created a significant, almost insurmountable distance between them. Her pain is a wall, impenetrable and isolating. She often recoils from Dina's touch, not out of rejection, but because the intimacy feels overwhelming, a stark contrast to the violence replaying in her mind. Her inability to fully articulate the depth of her suffering, coupled with a deep-seated guilt over her actions in Seattle, keeps her guarded. She pushes Dina away, not intentionally, but as a defense mechanism, fearing that her darkness might consume Dina too. The emotional chasm widens with each unacknowledged flashback, each unspoken fear. Dina's attempts to bridge this gap, though heartfelt, are often met with silence or a terse, almost hostile response, leaving both women feeling increasingly isolated within their shared home. The nights are no reprieve. Ellie struggles with chronic nightmares, a relentless cycle of terror that mirrors her waking flashbacks. She relives Joel's death, but also the deaths of Jesse, Owen, Mel, and Nora, the faces of those she killed and those she lost swirling together in a macabre dance. The nightmares are so vivid, so visceral, that she often wakes in a cold sweat, her heart pounding, gasping for air. Insomnia becomes her constant companion. She spends countless hours staring at the ceiling, the silence of the farmhouse amplifying the internal screams. The lack of restorative sleep impacts every aspect of her daily life. Her movements become sluggish, her concentration wanes, and her already fragile emotional state becomes even more precarious. She finds it difficult to focus on chores, to engage with JJ, or even to maintain a semblance of normalcy. The exhaustion is not just physical, it's a deep, soul-wearing fatigue that gnaws at her spirit. This persistent state of sleep deprivation further exacerbates her PTSD, creating a vicious cycle that seems impossible to break. The lines between waking and dreaming blur, and the farm, once a symbol of hope, begins to feel like a prison of her own making. One particularly bleak day, the fragile peace of the farm is shattered by the arrival of Tommy. He appears at their doorstep, a ghost of his former self. His face is gaunt, etched with pain and exhaustion, and his body bears the unmistakable marks of severe injury. He walks with a pronounced limp, one eye is covered by a patch, and his speech is slurred, clear indicators of the brutal encounter he had with Abby in Seattle. His arrival is a stark reminder of the violence they had all tried to leave behind. Tommy, however, has not come for comfort or convalescence. He has come seeking revenge, a burning desire that mirrors Ellie's own suppressed rage. He is a man broken but not defeated, his spirit fueled by a singular, destructive purpose: to make Abby pay for what she did to Joel and for what she did to him. He reveals to Ellie and Dina that he has been tracking Abby, driven by an obsessive need for retribution. Through his own network of contacts and relentless pursuit, Tommy has managed to gather information on Abby's whereabouts. He tells them, his voice raspy and filled with venom, that Abby has been seen in Santa Barbara, a coastal town in California. This revelation is a bombshell, shattering the fragile illusion of peace Ellie had tried to build. Tommy's words paint a picture of Abby, not as a ghost of the past, but as a tangible target, a living embodiment of their pain. He describes her location with a chilling precision, providing just enough detail to ignite the smoldering embers of Ellie's own vengeance. He speaks of the journey, the dangers, but his conviction is absolute. Tommy's plea for help, delivered with a raw intensity that cuts through Ellie's numbness, reignites her dormant desire for vengeance. He doesn't just inform her, he implores her, appeals to their shared grief, their shared loss. He reminds her of Joel, of the bond they shared, and the injustice of his death. He paints a picture of Abby living freely, unpunished, while they suffer the consequences. The emotional weight of his words, combined with the physical evidence of his suffering, acts as a powerful catalyst. Ellie had tried to bury her anger, to smother it with domesticity, but Tommy's presence rips open the old wounds. The thought of Abby, seemingly escaping justice, is unbearable. The idea of confronting her, of finally putting an end to the torment, begins to take root in her mind, overshadowing the peace she had so desperately sought. The quiet life on the farm, with its endless chores and sleepless nights, suddenly feels hollow, a betrayal of Joel's memory. Driven by this renewed, almost overwhelming urge for retribution, Ellie makes a momentous decision. She will leave the farm. She will abandon the life she had painstakingly built with Dina and JJ, and once again embark on a path of violence and uncertainty. Dina, witnessing the familiar, dangerous glint return to Ellie's eyes, pleads with her to stay. She reminds Ellie of their family, of JJ, of the future they were building. She begs her to consider the consequences, to break the cycle of violence. Dina's voice is filled with desperation, a desperate attempt to pull Ellie back from the precipice. She speaks of the love they share, the preciousness of their son, and the futility of further bloodshed. She argues that revenge will not bring Joel back, nor will it heal Ellie's wounds. In a moment of profound sadness and chilling finality, Dina warns Ellie that if she leaves, if she chooses the path of vengeance over her family, she cannot come back. This is not an idle threat, but a heartbroken ultimatum, a last-ditch effort to make Ellie choose. Dina understands that if Ellie walks away now, she will be choosing a life of endless pursuit, a life that has no room for the quiet joys of family. The implication is clear. The farm, their home, their life together will no longer be an option for her. The choice is stark, agonizing, and irreversible. Despite Dina's heartfelt pleas and the immense weight of her ultimatum, Ellie's resolve remains unshaken. The pull of vengeance is too strong, the ghost of Joel too persistent. She makes her choice, a choice that will forever alter the course of her life and the lives of those she loves. Ellie, now alone, embarks on the perilous journey to Santa Barbara. The decision weighs heavily on her, but the burning need for closure, for an end to her suffering, propels her forward. She follows the fragmented leads provided by Tommy, navigating the treacherous post-apocalyptic landscape of California. The journey itself is fraught with danger, a stark reminder of the world she had tried to escape. She encounters various perils, both human and infected. Scavengers and desperate survivors driven by hunger and fear lurk in the shadows, ready to ambush unsuspecting travelers. The ever-present threat of the infected, from the lumbering clickers to the terrifying shamblers, forces her to remain constantly vigilant, her senses heightened. She faces environmental challenges as well, harsh terrain, dwindling supplies, and the constant struggle for survival in a world that offers little respite. Each encounter, each close call hardens her resolve, but also chips away at her humanity, pushing her further down a path of isolation and desperation. She travels for weeks, the miles blurring into a monotonous rhythm of survival, her only companion the relentless pursuit of Abby. Finally, after a long and arduous journey, Ellie arrives in Santa Barbara. The coastal town, once a vibrant resort destination, is now a desolate shell, its beauty marred by the ravages of the cordyceps outbreak and the subsequent collapse of civilization. However, unlike many other abandoned settlements, Santa Barbara is not entirely deserted. It is under the iron-fisted control of a ruthless, heavily armed group known as the Rattlers. The Rattlers are a particularly brutal faction, distinguished by their methods of control and their distinctive snake-like branding marks. They are a law unto themselves, operating with impunity and instilling fear into anyone who crosses their path. Their presence casts a dark shadow over the entire region, making Santa Barbara a dangerous and unwelcoming place for outsiders. As Ellie cautiously navigates the outskirts of the town, she quickly begins to learn about the Rattlers' horrific practices. She overhears hushed conversations, sees disturbing signs, and eventually witnesses firsthand the chilling reality of their regime. The Rattlers are not merely scavengers or territorial defenders, they are slavers. They capture and enslave people, forcing them into servitude, often branding them with their serpentine symbol as a mark of ownership. These unfortunate individuals are then subjected to unimaginable cruelty, forced to perform manual labor, or used as human shields against the infected. The discovery of this brutal system sends a shiver down Ellie's spine. It adds another layer of grim reality to her already bleak quest. The world, it seems, can always find new ways to descend into depravity. Her mission to find Abby now takes on an even more perilous dimension, as she must contend not only with her target, but also with the ruthless and unpredictable Rattlers who control the very ground she walks on. The path to vengeance, she realizes, is far more complicated and dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Ellie, driven by a singular, consuming need for revenge, navigates the treacherous landscape of Santa Barbara. Her journey leads her directly into the heart of Rattler territory, a brutal, slave-owning faction that has established a foothold in the coastal city. She infiltrates one of their fortified camps, a grim collection of makeshift structures and watchtowers, her senses on high alert for any sign of Abby. The air is thick with the stench of wood smoke and unwashed bodies, the sounds of distant shouts and the clatter of weapons a constant reminder of the ever-present danger. Ellie moves with a predatory stealth, her combat knife a silent extension of her will, dispatching Rattler patrols with ruthless efficiency. Her focus is absolute, her mind a steel trap, every action calculated to bring her closer to her quarry. Within the camp's crude confines, a stroke of grim fortune awaits. Amidst the detritus of a recently abandoned guard post, Ellie discovers a crudely drawn map. It's a rough, hand-sketched diagram, yet its significance is immediately clear. The map details the layout of the Rattlers' main stronghold, a more formidable and heavily guarded compound nestled further along the coastline. More importantly, it marks a specific location within that stronghold, a beach, prominently indicated with a series of crude X's. a cold certainty settles over Ellie. This is where she'll find Abby. This map, a seemingly insignificant scrap of paper, becomes her beacon, guiding her through the final, agonizing stages of her hunt. Armed with this crucial intelligence, Ellie presses on, her resolve hardening with each step. The main stronghold is a more imposing obstacle, its perimeter bristling with defenses, but Ellie's experience in navigating hostile environments serves her well. She bypasses patrols, scales walls, and slips through gaps in the fortifications, a ghost in the night. The sounds of the ocean grow louder as she approaches the marked beach, a rhythmic roar that seems to echo the turmoil within her. And then, she sees them. On the sandy expanse, illuminated by the pale moonlight, are two figures, bound and barely recognizable, Abby and Lev. They are tied to wooden posts, their bodies emaciated and scarred, their heads bowed in exhaustion. The sight, instead of bringing the expected surge of triumph, is a jarring shock. This is not the powerful, formidable Abby she remembers. This is a broken shell, a victim, a flicker of something akin to pity, or perhaps just a momentary pause in her relentless pursuit crosses Ellie's face. But the years of grief, the trauma of Joel's death, and the burning need for retribution quickly reassert themselves. She approaches cautiously, her knife still clutched in her hand, the blade glinting ominously. The rattlers, having apparently abandoned their prisoners, are nowhere in sight. With a grim determination, Ellie begins to cut the ropes binding Abby and Lev. Each slice of the knife is deliberate, a tangible act of liberation, yet her motives remain complex and deeply conflicted. She is freeing them, yes, but not out of compassion. She is freeing Abby to face her, to finally settle the score. As the last rope falls away, Abby, weakened and disoriented, slowly raises her head. Her eyes, sunken and hollow, meet Ellie's. There is no recognition, no immediate spark of hatred, only a profound weariness. She is a shadow of her former self, her muscles wasted, her spirit seemingly broken by the ordeal of captivity. When Ellie finally speaks, her voice is a low growl, laced with years of suppressed rage. She demands that Abby fight, but Abby, barely able to stand, simply shakes her head, a silent refusal. The fight has gone out of her. She has nothing left to give. The image of this defeated Abby is not what Ellie had envisioned. It's anticlimactic, unsatisfying. The revenge she craves demands a struggle, a confrontation of equals, not a one-sided execution. Ellie, however, is beyond reason. The years of simmering resentment have calcified into an unyielding need for vengeance. She will not be denied her final confrontation. With a surge of renewed anger, she forces Abby to her feet, dragging her towards the water's edge. The sand beneath their feet is soft and yielding, a stark contrast to the unforgiving nature of their impending battle. The waves crash against the shore, a relentless, echoing rhythm that seems to underscore the inevitability of their clash. It's a brutal, desperate struggle, not a fair fight. Abby, despite her weakened state, finds a flicker of her old strength, fueled by a primal instinct for survival and a desire to protect Lev, who watches in horror from the sand. The fight is a raw, visceral spectacle of human desperation. It is not a display of martial arts prowess, but a chaotic, ugly brawl, born of pure, unadulterated hatred and pain. They claw, they punch, they bite, their bodies slamming against the wet sand and the unforgiving rocks. Every blow exchange carries the weight of their respective traumas, the echoes of their losses, the bitterness of their shared history. Ellie, fueled by her single-minded quest for revenge, fights with a feral intensity, her movements sharp and precise. Abby, despite her emaciation, taps into a deep reservoir of animalistic strength, her survival instincts kicking in. The fight is physically exhausting for both, their breath coming in ragged gasps, their muscles screaming in protest, but it is also profoundly emotionally draining, each strike a manifestation of the psychological wounds that have festered for so long. Slowly, inexorably, Ellie gains the upper hand. Her rage, her unwavering focus, her sheer will to end this propels her forward. She manages to pin Abby down in the shallow water, the waves lapping at their faces. With a final, desperate surge of strength, Ellie shoves Abby's head beneath the surface, holding it there, her fingers clamped around Abby's throat. The struggle beneath the water is silent, terrifying. Bubbles rise to the surface, a fleeting testament to Abby's fading life. Ellie's face is a mask of grim determination, her eyes burning with a cold fire. This is it, the culmination of everything, the moment she has yearned for, dreamt of, for so long. But then, as Abby's struggles begin to weaken, as the last vestiges of life threaten to ebb away, a different image flashes through Ellie's mind. It's not a memory of Joel's brutal death, not the pain of her loss, but a quiet, tender moment. Joel, sitting on the porch of the farmhouse, his guitar resting in his lap, his fingers gently strumming a familiar melody. His face is serene, a soft smile playing on his lips. The memory is sudden, unexpected, a jarring intrusion into the bloody reality of the present. It's a memory of love, of connection, of the bond they shared, a bond that Ellie had, in her grief, so carelessly discarded. The warmth of that memory, the profound sense of peace it evokes, clashes violently with the cold, murderous intent that grips her. The flashback, brief as it is, shatters Ellie's resolve. The image of Joel, playing his guitar, is a stark reminder of the man she loved, the man who would have abhorred this act of senseless violence. Her grip on Abby's head loosens. The need for revenge, which had consumed her for so long, suddenly feels hollow, meaningless. The cycle of violence, she realizes, will only perpetuate more suffering. With a ragged gasp, Ellie pulls Abby's head from the water, allowing her to cough and choke, to draw in life-giving air. The fight is over. The vengeance she sought has eluded her, replaced by a profound, agonizing realization. She has come all this way, sacrificed so much, only to find that the ultimate act of revenge offers no solace, no peace. In a silent, unspoken agreement born of shared exhaustion and a mutual understanding of the futility of their struggle, Ellie spares Abby and Lev. She watches as they stumble towards a small, dilapidated boat moored nearby, a vessel of uncertain seaworthiness. Her gaze is distant, her mind reeling from the emotional whiplash of the past few moments. She offers no words of forgiveness, no gestures of reconciliation. There is only a profound silence, a heavy quiet that speaks volumes. As the small boat pushes off from the shore, carrying Abby and Lev away into the vast indifferent ocean, Ellie is left alone on the beach, the waves still crashing, the sound a mournful echo of her own internal turmoil. The physical cost of the fight, however, is undeniable. During the brutal struggle, a moment of particularly savage combat results in a grievous injury to Ellie's right hand. Her index and middle fingers are mangled, severed, a stark and permanent reminder of the violence she has inflicted and endured. The loss is not just physical, it is a profound symbolic wound. It's a loss that will forever alter her ability to play Joel's guitar, the instrument that represents so much of their shared history, their bond, and her own artistic expression. The injury is a cruel irony, a final bitter twist in her agonizing journey. Days, or perhaps weeks later, Ellie returns to the farmhouse in Jackson, the home she had abandoned in her single-minded pursuit of Abby. The house is empty, quiet, a hollow shell of the life she once shared with Dina and Jesse. The silence is deafening, punctuated only by the creaks and groans of the old wood. She wanders through the familiar rooms, each step heavy with regret and loss. Finally, she finds Joel's guitar still propped against the armchair, exactly where she had left it. She picks it up, the smooth wood cool against her injured hand. She tries to strum a chord, to play a melody, to connect with the memory of Joel through the music they shared. But her mutilated fingers, now just stumps, refuse to cooperate. The sound is a discordant jangle, a painful reminder of what she has lost, both physically and spiritually. The music, a source of comfort and connection, is now denied to her. The farm, the guitar, the life she had once envisioned, all are irrevocably broken, shattered by the relentless pursuit of a vengeance that ultimately offered no redemption. She sits there, the guitar in her lap, the silence of the empty house pressing in around her, a profound and solitary figure, forever marked by the choices she has made. Having just witnessed the brutal, yet ultimately unfulfilled culmination of Ellie's quest for vengeance in Santa Barbara, we now move to the quiet, devastating aftermath that unfolds in 2039. This period, following the harrowing events on the California coast, marks a profound shift in Ellie's trajectory, a moment of reckoning with the immense personal cost of her relentless pursuit of Abby. The narrative here is one of profound loss, the stark realization of what has been irrevocably sacrificed, and the uncertain path forward. Ellie, battered and emotionally scarred from her encounter with Abby, makes the long, arduous journey back to the farmhouse in Jackson, Wyoming. This remote, idyllic setting, once a sanctuary of fragile hope and burgeoning domesticity with Dina and JJ, now stands as a stark monument to her choices. As she approaches the familiar porch, a sense of unease settles over her. The usual sounds of life, the gentle hum of the farm, the distant cries of a baby, are conspicuously absent. The silence is deafening, a prelude to the emotional devastation awaiting her. Entering the house, Ellie finds it eerily quiet, the air thick with the dust of abandonment. The familiar clutter of toys and domestic life has been meticulously removed, leaving behind a sterile, vacant space. Her heart sinks as she quickly ascertains the truth. Dina and the baby, JJ, have left. The home they had built, the semblance of a family she had desperately clung to, has dissolved in her absence. The realization washes over her with a cold, brutal clarity, confirming her deepest fears. Amidst the emptiness, a small folded note catches her eye, placed deliberately on a table. It's from Dina, her handwriting familiar yet now imbued with a sense of finality. The words are measured, sorrowful, but unwavering. Dina explains her departure, her inability to reconcile Ellie's obsessive need for revenge with the life they were trying to build. She recounts the fear, the constant anxiety, and the emotional toll Ellie's absence and single-minded focus on Abby had taken on her and JJ. Dina's words are not accusatory, but rather a mournful statement of fact, a testament to the chasm that had grown between them. She loved Ellie, the note implies, but could no longer endure the emotional turbulence, the constant threat of loss, and the ever-present shadow of violence that Ellie carried. The note underscores the profound impact of Ellie's choices, not just on herself, but on those she held dearest, shattering the fragile peace they had briefly found. It's a painful reminder that even the strongest bonds can fray and break under the relentless pressure of trauma and unresolved vengeance. Ellie's gaze then falls upon the empty crib in what was once JJ's nursery. The small wooden structure, once filled with the promise of new life and the gentle gurgle of a baby, now stands as a hollow shell, a poignant symbol of her profound loss. The absence is palpable, a physical ache in her chest. She runs her hand over the smooth wood, a ghost of a memory of JJ's soft skin, his tiny fingers clutching hers. Around the house, she sees other remnants of their life together, a half-finished knitting project, a worn children's book, a small toy left behind. Each item is a sharp, painful reminder of the domestic bliss she had forsaken, the quiet joy she had allowed to slip through her fingers in her single-minded pursuit of Abby. The farmhouse, once a symbol of sanctuary and a new beginning, now stands as a mausoleum of lost dreams, a testament to the devastating consequences of her actions. The silence amplifies her regret, each empty room echoing with the laughter and love that once filled them, now replaced by a chilling void. The weight of her choices presses down on her, an unbearable burden. In a desperate attempt to find solace or perhaps to reconnect with a part of herself that felt lost, Ellie picks up Joel's guitar. This instrument, a cherished gift from Joel, represented their bond, their shared moments of peace and connection, and a legacy of love. She positions her fingers over the fretboard, attempting to strum a familiar chord, a melody that once brought her comfort. But her efforts are met with immediate, agonizing failure. Her left hand, specifically her ring and pinky fingers, are mangled, 2 digits brutally severed by Abby during their final, desperate struggle on the Santa Barbara beach. The injury, a direct consequence of her vengeful quest, renders her incapable of forming the necessary chords. The once fluid movements of her fingers are now clumsy, painful, and utterly ineffective. She struggles, her brow furrowed in frustration and despair, trying to force her damaged fingers into position. Each attempt sends a jolt of pain through her hand, a stark physical reminder of the brutal confrontation with Abby. The guitar, once a source of joy and a direct link to Joel, now mocks her, a tangible representation of her brokenness. The inability to play is more than a physical limitation. It's a symbolic severing of her connection to Joel, a cruel irony that her pursuit of revenge against his killer has left her unable to engage in one of their most cherished, shared activities. The music, a language they both understood, is now silent for her, a melody forever unfinished. The frustration quickly gives way to a profound sense of grief, not just for the loss of her fingers, but for the loss of that intimate connection, the music that had been a balm to her soul. She clenches her jaw, tears stinging her eyes as the reality of her permanent injury sinks in. It's a bitter pill to swallow, a constant physical manifestation of the price she paid for her revenge. As she grapples with the unyielding reality of her injury, a vivid memory, a poignant flashback washes over her. She sees Joel, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners, his patient hands guiding hers on the very same guitar. He is teaching her a new chord, his voice a low rumble as he explains the nuances of finger placement, the rhythm of the strum. She remembers the warmth of his presence, the quiet joy of their shared moments, the way music seemed to bridge the gaps between them. The memory is sharp, clear, and intensely painful, highlighting the depth of her emotional connection to Joel and the profound significance of the guitar as a conduit for that bond. It's a cruel juxtaposition, the memory of effortless music and loving instruction against the present reality of her mangled hand and the inability to play. This flashback serves to underscore the tragic irony of her journey, where the very act of seeking vengeance for Joel has irrevocably damaged her ability to cherish and express their shared legacy. The memory is a bittersweet torment, a reminder of what she had and what she has now lost, both physically and emotionally. The image of Joel, alive and vibrant, contrasts sharply with the emptiness of the farmhouse and the silence of the unplayed guitar, deepening her sense of isolation and regret. With a heavy heart, Ellie finally accepts the devastating truth of her situation. She leaves the farmhouse, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Her future is shrouded in uncertainty, a vast, unexplored landscape of unknowns. She has sacrificed everything for revenge: her relationship with Dina, the stability of a home, the innocence of her spirit, and even a part of her physical self. The pursuit of Abby had become an all-consuming fire, burning away everything else in its path, leaving behind only ashes and regret. She has no clear destination, no immediate purpose beyond the aching emptiness within her. The once vibrant, determined young woman is now a hollowed-out shell, adrift in a world that feels both familiar and alien. The cost of her vengeance has been immeasurable, leaving her with a profound sense of loss and an overwhelming sense of isolation. Despite her inability to play it, Ellie carefully takes Joel's guitar with her. It's a symbolic act, a testament to her enduring connection to him, a tangible piece of his memory that she refuses to relinquish. Even broken, even silent, the guitar remains a powerful link to the man who had loved her unconditionally, who had taught her to survive, and who had given her a reason to live. It's a silent promise to herself, perhaps, that even in her brokenness, she will not forget him, nor the love they shared. The guitar, though now unplayable by her, represents a hope, however faint, of one day finding a way to honor his memory, to reconnect with the joy he brought into her life, even if the music itself remains elusive. It is a burden, yet also a comfort, a constant reminder of the love that still anchors her in a world that has otherwise crumbled around her. Mounting her horse, Ellie rides away from the empty farmhouse, leaving behind the remnants of a life that could have been. She rides alone, a solitary figure against the vast, unforgiving landscape, her silhouette fading into the horizon. Her destination is unknown, her path uncertain, but she carries with her the heavy burden of her past and the lingering hope of a future, however indistinct. The image of her riding away, alone, into the unknown, is a powerful visual metaphor for her profound isolation and the uncertain journey that lies ahead. The road before her is long and arduous, a testament to the enduring consequences of her choices. Meanwhile, far away from Ellie's desolate journey, Abby and Lev continue their own path, a stark contrast to Ellie's solitary despair. Having been rescued by the Fireflies from the clutches of the Rattlers in Santa Barbara, they are now actively seeking to rejoin the remnants of the organization. Their journey is one of renewed purpose, a search for community and a chance to contribute to a larger cause. The Fireflies, once thought to be disbanded, represent a beacon of hope for Abby, a chance to atone for her past actions and find meaning in a world scarred by the cordyceps outbreak. Lev, ever loyal and resilient, remains by her side, a constant companion and a symbol of the new family Abby has found. Their destination is the Catalina Island Firefly Base, a place rumored to be a gathering point for the scattered members of the organization. This journey signifies a potential new beginning for Abby and Lev, a move towards rebuilding and finding a place in the world, while Ellie remains adrift, grappling with the devastating aftermath of her own choices. The parallel narratives highlight the divergent paths of these two central figures, their respective journeys now leading them in entirely different directions, each carrying their own burdens and hopes. Having parted ways with the WLF, Abby and Lev, driven by their shared hope for a renewed purpose, set sail for Catalina Island. Their destination, the former Firefly Hospital, a place Abby remembered as a beacon of hope and a potential sanctuary. The journey itself was fraught with peril, the open ocean of vast and unpredictable expanse, but their determination outweighed the risks. Upon their arrival, the sight that greeted them was disheartening. The once bustling medical facility, a symbol of the Fireflies' ambition to find a cure, stood eerily silent and abandoned. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight piercing through broken windows, illuminating empty rooms and long-deserted medical equipment. It was a stark reminder of how much had changed, how the world had continued its relentless decay even in the face of such valiant efforts. As they meticulously searched the desolate hospital, a sense of grim realization began to settle over them. There were no signs of recent occupation, no fresh supplies, no evidence of ongoing operations. Instead, they found clear indications that the Fireflies had either disbanded entirely or, more optimistically, moved on from Catalina Island. Old, faded posters promoting their cause peeled from walls, and outdated medical records lay scattered, gathering dust. The silence of the place was deafening, a stark contrast to the vibrant, hopeful memories Abby held of her time with the group. The initial surge of hope that had propelled them across the sea began to wane, replaced by a gnawing uncertainty. Had their quest been in vain? Was the dream of the Fireflies truly dead? Just as despair threatened to fully engulf them, a faint, static-laced sound caught Abby's ear. It was a radio, tucked away in a forgotten corner of what appeared to be a former communications room. With a jolt of renewed energy, she worked to bring it to life. After a few tense moments of crackling and interference, a human voice emerged, clear enough to understand. It was a broadcast, not a live communication, but a recorded message from the Fireflies. The message, though brief, was a lifeline. It spoke of regrouping efforts, of a new location, a new attempt to rebuild their organization and reignite their mission. The details were sparse, deliberately vague to avoid detection, but the implication was clear. The Fireflies were not gone, merely displaced. They had a new beacon, a new purpose. This discovery, this faint glimmer of hope, was precisely what Abby and Lev needed. The abandonment of Catalina Island, while initially disheartening, now made sense. The Fireflies, ever resilient, had simply adapted, seeking a more secure or strategically advantageous location to continue their work. For Abby, this wasn't just about rejoining a faction, it was about finding a community, a family, a place where her skills and her desire to make a difference could be channeled into something meaningful. For Lev, it represented a chance at stability, a safe haven away from the constant threat of the Seraphites and the unpredictable dangers of the post-apocalyptic world. Their decision was immediate and resolute. They would pursue this new Firefly location. The journey would undoubtedly be long and arduous, but the prospect of a new beginning, a renewed purpose, fueled their resolve. They meticulously gathered what supplies they could from the abandoned hospital, studied the faint clues embedded in the radio broadcast, and prepared for the next leg of their uncertain but hopeful odyssey. The challenges of travel and survival continued to be ever present as Abby and Lev embarked on their search for the Firefly's new base. The world remained a brutal and unforgiving landscape, where every journey was a gamble. They navigated treacherous terrain, avoided infected hordes, and remained constantly vigilant against hostile survivor factions. Food and clean water were precious commodities, and shelter from the elements was often temporary and unreliable. Each day was a test of their endurance, their resourcefulness, and their unwavering bond. Yet, through it all, the hope of finding the Fireflies, of contributing to something larger than themselves, sustained them. They were no longer aimless wanderers, but individuals with a clear, albeit challenging, objective. Their journey was a testament to the enduring human spirit, the drive to find meaning and community even in the most desolate of circumstances. The specific location of the new Firefly base remained a mystery to them, a series of breadcrumbs leading them ever onward, through ruined cities and overgrown wilderness, each step bringing them closer, they hoped, to their new home. Meanwhile, far away, Ellie was left to grapple with the profound and devastating consequences of her actions. The farmhouse, once a symbol of her attempt at a normal life, now stood as a monument to her failures. Her relentless pursuit of revenge against Abby had cost her everything. Jesse was dead, Joel was dead, and Dina, the love of her life, had left her, taking their son, JJ, with her. The silence of the empty house was a constant, mocking reminder of the family she had so carelessly sacrificed. But perhaps the most immediate and visceral consequence of her final confrontation with Abby was the loss of 2 fingers on her left hand. This physical impairment, a direct result of her single-minded focus on vengeance, was a cruel irony. It meant she could no longer play the guitar, a cherished connection to Joel and a profound source of solace and expression. The music, a language they had shared, was now silenced, a tangible representation of the void left in her life. Ellie's emotional state was one of profound grief, regret, and uncertainty. The weight of her choices pressed down on her, a suffocating blanket of despair. She was haunted by the ghosts of her past, by the faces of those she had lost, and by the realization that her quest for revenge had brought her no peace, only deeper pain. The emptiness within her was a cavernous echo of the emptiness of her home. She was adrift, without purpose, without direction. The future, once filled with the promise of a family and a quiet life, now stretched before her as an intimidating, barren expanse. The laughter of JJ, the warmth of Dina's embrace, the comforting presence of Joel's memory, all were gone, replaced by a chilling silence. Her once fiery determination had been extinguished, leaving behind only ashes of sorrow and self-reproach. The world, which she had once navigated with a fierce sense of purpose, now felt overwhelmingly bleak and meaningless. The world itself, of course, continued to be a dangerous and unforgiving place, oblivious to Ellie's personal tragedy or Abby and Lev's renewed hope. Infected in all their grotesque forms, still roamed the ruins of civilization, a constant, primal threat. Runners, stalkers, clickers, and the terrifying shamblers and bloaters continued their relentless, mindless existence, a testament to the enduring power of the cordyceps infection. Hostile survivors driven by desperation, paranoia, or outright malice were equally prevalent, their ruthlessness often surpassing that of the infected. Scavengers, bandits, and rival factions constantly vied for resources, territory, and dominance, making every encounter a potential life or death struggle. The fragile pockets of civilization that did exist were constantly under threat, their survival a precarious balance against overwhelming odds. For every community that managed to carve out a semblance of order, countless others had fallen to the relentless tide of chaos. The long-term impact of the cordyceps infection on the global population remained a constant existential threat. The sheer scale of the devastation was almost unimaginable. Humanity had been brought to its knees, its numbers decimated, its infrastructure shattered, its very future hanging by a thread. The possibility of the infection mutating, evolving into an even more virulent or adaptable form, was a terrifying prospect that loomed over every survivor. The scientific knowledge and resources needed to combat such a global pandemic were largely gone, swallowed by the collapse of society. Every day was a reminder of humanity's precarious position, clinging to existence in a world fundamentally altered by a microscopic fungus. The very air seemed to carry the weight of this biological catastrophe, a silent testament to the fragility of life. In this bleak landscape, the possibility of a cure or a return to civilization remained a distant and profoundly uncertain hope for humanity. The Fireflies, as Abby and Lev now sought to rejoin, represented one of the last organized efforts to find a solution, to reclaim some semblance of the world that was lost. But even their efforts were fragmented, their resources limited, their success far from guaranteed. The sheer complexity of the cordyceps, its insidious nature, and the lack of scientific infrastructure made any breakthrough seem like a miracle. A return to civilization, to the comforts and certainties of the pre-outbreak world, felt like an impossible dream. The generations born after the initial outbreak knew only this broken world, their understanding of a functioning society relegated to faded photographs and whispered tales. The path forward was obscured by rubble, by fear, and by the ever-present threat of extinction. Yet, even in the darkest corners of this ravaged world, the human spirit, in its stubborn refusal to yield, continued to yearn for a better future, for a glimmer of light in the overwhelming darkness. The stories of Abby and Ellie, though diverging, both underscored this fundamental truth. Even when hope seemed lost, the search for meaning, for connection, for a future, however uncertain, continued. From the very first outbreak that shattered civilization to the quiet, uncertain dawn of a new future, the journey through the world of The Last of Us has been a relentless exploration of survival, loss, and the enduring, often brutal, complexities of human connection. Each pivotal moment, from the initial chaos to the deeply personal struggles that followed, has woven a rich tapestry of stories, demonstrating how extraordinary circumstances forge ordinary people into legends, for better or worse. And that is the complete The Last of Us timeline.